I responded back.
We did?
I just emailed back. We didn't get it.
United States of America and the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can you do a roll call, please?
Councilmember Robinson?
Here.
Councilmember Bluebauer?
Here.
Mayor Condon?
Here.
Councilmember Bauer?
Here. Councilor Rubik is out sick. Today, so we'll get it for us. Before we go on here to all this crowd in here, I want something understood here through this whole process, and you'll have some time to talk tonight. But there's 3 rules I have in my meetings, and I want you to understand this very much, okay? Common respect, common courtesy, leave your anger at the door and bring your issues and concerns to us. If you can't do that with civility, then my suggestion is to put your coat on and walk out the door now. Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay. All right, let's move on here to tonight's approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Mulbar makes that motion. Do I have a second? I'll second. Councilor Bauer makes that second. Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to tonight's consent agenda. Do I have a motion tonight to adopt tonight's consent agenda?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Councilor Robinson makes that motion. Councilor Mulbar makes a second. Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries again. Thank you. Okay. Meeting open to the public.
We have, yep.
All right, is this about the issue coming up here on Green Valley? Now we can wait till that comes up the topic and then we'll discuss it at that point, okay? Anybody else that besides that issue?
I don't believe so.
If anyone has anything on both sides of the agenda.
Yeah, anything other than that Green Valley project?
I'm here to talk about the jurisdiction of having a court action with a Liz pendants to decide.
Does it have to pertain to the Green Valley project?
It is related, but this is a separate issue though. So,
Name, address?
Gene Rexico, 6533 160th Street West.
All right,
And my surveyor, James Bridell, has informed me that Green Valley has not done a survey on the ground. And that pertaining to that in the support action and the Liz pendants to determine the boundary line on the ground, that you may not have jurisdiction to go ahead with the Green Valley development plan. With a footnote here, I want to state that on your own planning development, there is a sentence, and I have kindly asked the staff to bring it up at these meetings, but they haven't. I kindly asked them to bring up the fact that whoever prepared your development plan for Green Valley has a statement on there saying that the lands overlap with other landowners and that court action needs to be taken or is recommended to be taken. And I'm sure the staff has the exact wording on that. I actually drove over to the city and talked about that. But that's why I started this court action, because we truly have a boundary dispute. And my question to you and the rest of the council is that, do you have jurisdiction to put a development on someone else's land?
And you're seeing this is someone else's land by who's someone else?
It's my land, Gene Rexaco. My land butts up against Green Valley Development. And they're putting, without doing a survey on the ground, they're putting their development plan on my land. And the question is it lawful for this city to approve a preliminary development plan that includes my land with Green Valley Development? That's the question. I would appreciate an answer to that.
All right, Dave, Joe, you have a comment
So
on that?
any court order would have to be done before the city council acts, and that has not been done. So the city council does have the latitude to act on this application.
All right, Dave, what's your input on this?
It's our opinion that there is a current court case between the property owners. Separate from that is the action before the city council tonight. The city is acting pursuant to Minnesota statutes 15.99 subdivision 3D. There is no court order that we have received staying the city council's action, and therefore the city is still subject to the deadlines of any land use application. And so again, it is our opinion that the city council can review this application. One of the conditions of approval that is listed is that all title issues get resolved. If the title issues somehow change and the city council has already given its approval, then the developer would have to come back to the city because something would have changed at this point. But the statute provides for an automatic approval if the city council does not act. Therefore, it is our opinion that the city council should hear the application.
Craig, was a survey done on this?
There was a survey done and it's noted, as the gentleman said, that there's overlaps and gaps, which do need to be resolved prior to final plan.
All right, so not in the preliminary, but the final plan.
I don't think the county surveyor will move forward until those overlaps and gaps are resolved with the final plan.
Okay, but there are questions on it now.
Yes, but it's not an uncommon situation. Descriptions on how the land is divided up they don't always coincide. So again, that's where you get your overlaps and gaps.
So what I'm asking you is, Dave, once again, we're saying that legally we can go to the preliminary part of this, but until it gets to final, all these concerns would have to be addressed.
That is correct.
Yeah, could I just mention something briefly about?
Name and address of the city you live in.
Zach Statham, Apple Valley, 6533 160th Street West in Apple Valley.
And that's the same for the gentleman sitting down. What city do you live in?
It's Apple Valley.
Okay. When I ask for a city and address, it's the city you live in, not the land you own here.
Sure,
City you
yeah,
live in,
I
okay?
understand. As for pertaining to the survey, we actually spoke with our surveyor this week, and he contacted Green Valley surveyor, Eric, and they had a conversation about his survey. And the last that I heard back is that their surveyor said he's gonna go back out there because he did not see that there's a fence line there. And he told us that he's gonna go back out there and redo it and look for this fence line. So I'm not sure how that affects things or what survey they have before you tonight, but I just thought you should know that.
Thank you for that. Sure. So, Craig, do we have any information, I mean, other than a survey, we have not done the survey here, only Buchanan and the person requesting this change has done the survey, right, on his end?
Correct. Acre Land has been working for the developer.
All right, but once again, until those concerns are addressed, it can't go to a final plat.
Correct. I doubt county would record it with overlaps and gaps in there.
And you're saying this is not abnormal?
It happens. Yes.
All right, I'm gonna ask for a meeting open to public on any other issue besides this, as we'll get to that issue, then we'll discuss it at that time in the meeting. So anybody else here for any other thing besides Green Valley project? None? Okay, then we're gonna move on to Green Valley. First topic is Green Valley Reserve Second Edition rezoning preliminary plat subdivision variances. Number one, resolution 2022-02 approving a zoning request ordinance 287 rezoning. Resolution 2022-03 approving preliminary plat for Green Valley Reserve Second Edition. And number three, resolution 2022-04 approving the subdivision variances. So do you want to go, Beth, here? I'm gonna get your stick on this first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor and Council, before you tonight are requests that pertain to the Green Valley Preserve Second Edition development. And the requests for this project that are before you tonight include a rezoning from the A2 district to a PUD based on the A2 district, a preliminary plat, and subdivision variances for road length and road width. So this is the existing site outlined in black there. The existing site is located south of Ambassador on the west side of the city. The site today includes 5 parcels, which together make up about 146 acres. The northern 27 acres, that's used for farmland, and then the remainder of the site is undeveloped open space and includes a wetland. That wetland that you see on the screen there is about 60 acres, or about 40% of the entire site. There are large lot residential lots that exist to the north and northeast. Then the remaining surrounding land is undeveloped open space and farmland. Property owner is requesting to subdivide the site into 14 residential lots and 1 outlot. That outlot will be covered with a conservation easement. As part of this development, a PUD is requested for this subdivision. So I understand this is kind of a small screen for this, but I just wanted to show you what the plat looks like. This is the preliminary plat, or at least the northernmost portion of it. So you'll see that those lots are clustered to the north towards Ambassador Boulevard. There is a public road that's proposed that runs south from Ambassador, which would provide access to each of the proposed lots. This is that large wetland, the north part of it. I'm just showing where that is on the site. It continues to the south and the east. And that red hash right there, that shows the proposed conservation easement for the outlot, and that continues to the south and east as well. You'll notice that a good portion of that easement includes a lot of that wetland area. So the site is guided for agriculture use within the 2040 comprehensive plan. The intent of this land use category is to protect natural resources and working agricultural lands. That category has a maximum density of 1 unit per 10 acres, which on a site of this size would allow 14 units. The proposed development is proposing 14 units. So the density requirements are met. They're also proposing to cluster the homes to the north and leave additional open space and preserving the wetland and the woodland on that site within that conservation easement. Rural clusters are something that is supported within the comprehensive plan as well. The site is currently zoned A2. The applicant is requesting a PUD for this site, which would be based on the A2 district. There would be some flexibility requested for lot area and lot width. These lots are still considered rural lots. The proposed lots range in size from 1.8 acres to 27.5 acres. Each lot would be required to have its own services. So septic and well would be required on each of these sites. There is a temporary dead-end public street that's proposed, again, that runs from Ambassador to the south. This street has been located along the western property line as we move south here. And that was done on purpose in order to allow a potential future extension to the west, if that's ever desired. The applicant is requesting to create this street with a rural design. So that means that this would have a narrower pavement width, but would still be paved. It would have some gravel shoulders and then a ditch system as opposed to curb and gutter. So there are variances requested for roadway length and roadway width that are associated with the layout of what's shown here, and then that rural section. Because the site abuts Ambassador, which is a county road, Anoka County reviewed the proposed development and provided their comments. They would be requiring an eastbound right turn lane into this development and a westbound bypass lane. And those would be something that are the applicant's responsibility to install. Just touching on the conservation easement bit, the applicant is proposing a 62-acre conservation easement that would be over all of Outlot A. This easement would be held by the city and is meant to preserve the natural features on the site in perpetuity. This area is not intended for public use. This would be more aimed at a passive open space idea. The applicant has provided a 30-foot access easement for the city so that the city would be able to maintain that site and ensure that the site is being maintained as open space as opposed to being developed. So just to show you what this looks like, on the right side here is the proposed preliminary plat. You can see that there, the outlot and the easement are shown in blue on the screen. And just comparing it on the left side, that's the aerial imagery. You'll see that, again, the majority of that wetland is included in the easement area. We want to touch on the snowmobile trail. There is an existing snowmobile trail. It's recognized by the DNR that runs through this property. That trail is proposed to continue as part of this development with slight modifications. So instead of being on private property, that trail is proposed to be within the public right of way, so that it would be more sure of being maintained in the future. Once it runs through that right of way, it could run through lot 9, and then it would join back. Actually, it would run down, and then eventually would join up through the conservation and easement area. The Snowmobile Club did review this proposal and provided a letter of support, which was included in the packets. Landscaping for residential lots requires 2 trees per lot. That has been provided with the landscaping plans that the city has received. The city has also discussed having a buffer along Ambassador Boulevard and that the northernmost lot, lot 1. Just to protect that lot from the traffic, the noise, the lights that may be going along Ambassador. So as a planned unit development, the idea is to give flexibility from the zoning standards in exchange for a public benefit. Staff's opinion, this application has provided the public benefit. First, the applicant is providing a large conservation easement, which preserves natural features in a passive open space setting. Second, the applicant is requesting to cluster these homes without adding additional density. And that's something that reduces the environmental impact of the development. It also decreases the amount of infrastructure that's required for that site, both to be constructed as well as to do maintenance. And thirdly, the applicant is proposing to preserve that snowmobile trail and move a good portion of it to a public arena, which would allow it to continue in the future. The Planning Commission reviewed this project at their September meeting. At that meeting, the public did attend and brought some concerns relating to traffic and safety, existing farming uses in the area, and they were opposed to allowing lots that were less than 10 acres in size. The Planning Commission did table it at that meeting, and they wanted more information about the public street, about landscaping and lot buildability, as well as the comments from the local council. So this item was brought back after the October Planning Commission meeting, where a second public hearing was held. And again, we heard similar concerns about traffic and safety, as well as a discussion about that snowmobile trail and the proposed public benefit of the PUD. After Planning Commission discussion, there was a motion to recommend denial of the project that was entertained. That motion to deny failed. 3-3. So again, that motion to recommend denial failed. So there's not an official recommendation of approval or denial for you tonight from the Planning Commission. However, staff does recommend approval of the rezoning, the preliminary plat, and the subdivision variances with conditions. So council action is requested tonight on this item. Again, council's options are to approve the requests, deny the requests, or table them and ask for additional information. So if these items are approved tonight, then the rezoning ordinance will go for a second reading at the next meeting this month, and will be effective in February. Put the suggested motions on the screen here. They're also in your packet on page 33. I did want to note for the suggested motion number 1, after the council packet was sent out, staff noted a small provision that was left out of that draft ordinance. As part of that ordinance, staff would write a stipulation that waives the requirement for a sidewalk along a public street. That is something that council is allowed to do by code, and staff feels is appropriate given the nature that this is a rural section of the road. So with that, I will pause and take any questions.
In this road here, there's a variance request from 1,500 to 1,900 feet.
That's correct.
And this is basically not by city requirements because it's in the rural area. And it would be paved.
The road would be paved, yes.
And then there's buffers, like you said, for the noise that I saw on one of the pages on the packets of Ambassador.
Yes, that is a condition that staff is added.
Okay, is the applicant here tonight?
What's that?
Right here. Why don't you come up here? Name, address, and the city you live in.
My name is Eric Darius. I live in Hamlet, Minnesota, and I'm the land surveyor. Within these plants.
Josh Savage, Oak Grove, Minnesota, Green Valley.
Terry Buchanan, Shoreman, Minnesota. Green Valley.
All right, do you have any comments you want to bring forth to us on this project yourself before we start the conversation here?
I think that Eric might have something to say about the survey.
Yes, on the survey issues in question, basically there's a gap or an overlap on, if you look in block 1, basically what happened. Block 1. So on the west side, basically what happened is you have one property description that came from one side of the section, and that's the Green Valley property description. And then on Keenan's property, the legal description came from the other side of the section, and they're based on a perfect world, perfect quarter. So a quarter mile is supposed to be 1320. Well, when they did the original survey, sometimes the sections are a little long, sometimes they're a little short. So the actual property, well, the gap or the overlap, it's a common thing. So and the difference along those jagged lines, it just means a matter of feet. And we're not here like arguing where that is from the line through few feet one way or another. It's just a matter of how it was described. So I noted on the survey that, I noted on the survey to protect Green Valley and also to protect Gene, the adjacent landowner, that, hey, there is an issue that has to be cleaned up before the plat is approved, before it's, before we actually do the plat on it, we have to approve it. So, or we have to figure out where that gap is and resolve it somehow. So, and then the other question that, the other thing that Gene brought up about the fence line, there's an old cattle fence that's well off the property line. And we do have the history on it, and the fence that's in question, it was an old cattle fence. It wasn't the boundary line, so I'm not sure what that issue is there. The only issue that I know of is, the gap in the old description, so.
All right, so you're aware of these concerns and you're addressing these concerns.
Correct.
Yes. All right. And Kate, our community development director, sent me some other plans that were discussed in past times. And from what I looked at these plans, these exhibits that were sent to me, it seems like this is the only way that you can actually end up having a wetland, there, and a conservation area. The other plans look to me that the wetlands would be gone and so would the conservation area be gone. Is that right? I mean, from what I saw here in these other past exhibits that you sent me, it's pretty much the layout. If you went to 14 10-acre lots, there would be no wetland or conservation area.
Correct. So Mayor and Council, earlier today, I sent you one of the original concepts that Green Valley had brought forward that showed 16 lots on the acreage and down to the 14 different lots. And what it was is it would work a house into a corner with those wetlands, but there would be no conservation easement. And it still would allow, a developer can fill in wetlands if they so choose by paying the state or developing wetlands in another area. So those types of designs are typical if you're going to do that type of work. But after working with staff, that's how we developed the concept that we're working on tonight.
Right, but wetlands serve a purpose.
Correct.
Just like the forests in South America and all that are filtering in for the earth, just like coral reefs serve a purpose for the environment. Wetlands serve a purpose. Yeah, you can fill them in, but are you doing it correct? Are you doing the right thing by doing that? So I guess my point is here, and just to pass the conversation here, is that this layout that you're proposing is the one layout where the wetland is retained along the conservation area. It's all about the only we could do it there.
One of the things I wanted to mention too is the Snowmobile Trail. We did a different plan. That would be more owners that would be cutting across their property and therefore they could stop the Snowmobile Trail. Our plan is to try to keep it there as long as we can through public road and this conservation. One of the Snowmobile guys is here.
Okay, because I saw the letter that they wrote.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, is there anything else you guys want to mention here?
No, I can take any questions when you're done.
All right, so let me start with the council. If you have any questions, Joe, you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, I guess. I was just kind of curious, I'm glad you mentioned what's going on with the boundary line. So, it sounds like that's a dispute between you guys and Gene, I would assume.
Correct.
Kevin?
No, I don't have any questions. I was on the same line as you.
No.
No questions for Green Valley, no.
All right, so you understand the concerns he has, you're addressing those concerns, and you've addressed the snowmobile concerns and other concerns I read here.
Yeah, it's already what Title's working on those whole lots.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. I want to take some comments from the public, all right? But I want to do this in an orderly fashion, and I don't want to go crazy about this all night with this documentation, here, because there's one segment here, by the way, that I want to point out here that I read here. I'll try to get to it quickly here, but where you say in here that the people that are doing this application don't live here. So at this point here, I'm just curious here, to raise your hands of the people that own property here but do not live in our city. raise your hands. Own property here, but do not live in our city. One, I know you just said that you live in Apple Valley, and Gene lives in Apple Valley, so that's 3. Anyone else?
I live right next, I'm as close, I'm 3 miles.
All right, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
do you live in St., you own property in St. Francis, but do you live in St. Francis? Okay, so that's 4. Because like I say again, one of the things I saw in here in this PowerPoint, as I read it before I came to the meeting during the day here, it says here about our questioning the fact that Mr. Buchanan and his people, his staff, don't live here in the city, but neither do some of the property owners here.
Right, what was, and we were wanting to just talk through it as a group, and Bill's gonna kick it off, and so it will be orderly. What was stated in the 10-20 meeting is that all the money would stay here, and there was some miscommunication on that, so that's the only reason that it's in there. So,
Okay, because I mean, like I say
so it
again,
was just about the money's gonna stay in St. Francis, so it was just, that's what the.
well, the money stays here in the sense of property tax. I mean, there's no rate users because they're not hooked to our system here, but it's subject to well, it does stay here as property tax. So let's start off here in an orderly way here, try to bring up some of your new points would be better than the same old points, but let's see what you can bring up to us.
Phil Thompson, 6448 Ambassador Boulevard. So yeah, she's handing out some good packets for those of you who don't have it. We're gonna do this as quickly as we can, because I know this is a big document that we have here. So I'm gonna let some people speak on some areas there, and then I'm gonna speak a little bit more later on some of the agricultural aspects of it that would affect me. So I'm the property owner directly to the east of this development. On the Green Valley Preserve. So yeah, you have some of our opening statements there, and some of these things, some of you have already read through it there. So we realize that, this will get developed and stuff like that. We're asking for to stay maintained as it was just recently approved a year ago in 2020, the Met Council plan for 2020 on that. So we're just asking that would stay on the recently adopted approval of that we spent lots of money on to do that, which we all have done. So again, I won't go through each bullet point there, but it was denied by the planning and zoning.
Mr. Mayor, that's incorrect. I'm sorry.
It was tabled.
It was
It
tied.
was, a motion to deny was on the table. That motion failed.
Right,
There's not
September,
any,
it was tabled from September to October and then voted on in October, and it was a 3-3, which failed.
yep, and
Which
that's
goes
where
down
it's,
as a denial.
no, that's a failed motion.
Failed motion.
Failed correction.
Failed.
Okay, thank you for the correction. So there was not unanimous approval for that. Obviously by doing this, I don't know how that would take into account the Sugar Hills Trail on that. And I have personally spoken to the neighbors in the area. And I've gone around talking to people with agricultural land that have purchased minimum 10 acres, and not one of them has said that they're in favor of this. The people all going out from where I live here. So they bought that all with the understanding, said, well, we thought that's supposed to stay 10 acres. And yes, you are correct, that is supposed to stay 10 acres on that there. So anyway, so there's a few other things here as you go through that. I'm not the best speaker. I'm gonna let Julie say a couple things here. She can give her name and address here. There's a few other things that I want to highlight too.
Yeah, just tell us what page you're on as you move forward, please.
Sure. Jody, state your name.
Jody Curtis, I live in Zimmerman, Minnesota. My daughter lives right here, like 3 miles from her house. So what we did was we tried to pull all of our thoughts and all of our questions and all of our concerns on paper, just so it's easy to understand. We have the reasons to deny the resolution of rezoning. The proposal go against the ordinance where a lot of people spent a lot of money. It was.
What page are you on that to?
I'm on page 2. So we're, so we have 4 reasons why to deny that. One's from the 2040 plan. There's no benefit to allow the variances. The flexibility from zoning standards would not be necessary if they came to the table with 10-acre lots. And it was documented in the 1020 planning commission meeting that one of the investors that's sitting over here stated that before they landed on their concept, they did come to the city with 1 to 10 acres, and they did meet the zoning. So it was this slide over here, or this poster over here, all the yellow are things that they're looking for a variance on. Over here, there's still not some infrastructure in place, but they meet the requirements. And there's a lot of options, and I think you mentioned collaboration and problem solving. That's what this group is trying to do, is to do that. The proposal on page 3, the proposal, HKGI, they created the 2040 plan with community involvement. It cost $70,000. It was approved by everybody. It was unanimous by this group. It was just approved in March of 2020. And although rule covenants and local ordinances are everything that we're following, we're trying to be consistent with our development. On slide 4 as a point, there will be no new benefits. Wetlands is green space. You're looking at a group of people that love space. Obviously, we love space. There's no additional conservation design principles stated. Viewing is not a benefit, but it does not allow variances of such as what's being proposed today. The Snowmobile Trail, continuing that is not a new benefit and not a reason for a variance either. It's currently available, but if you have a Snowmobile Trail going down here, and in the same memo that was stated, the Snowmobile Trail Association says they try to avoid streets because of safety issues. Here you have 14 homes. They would go down one side with kids playing, smaller space, not enough green space, and on the other side. In fact, if we had some examples of, if you had the proper size, then the Snowmobile Trail could go up along the side of the property. So there are ways to work around this. We have on page 5, there's a lot of negative impacts and consequences and concerns. I know in your packet, it says that there was no safety hazards or concerns, but there are. It doesn't appear that, again, the 15 to 20 year Sugar Hills Trail is really been considered. It hasn't been shared. Many of these people walk and ride bikes on that side of County Road 28. And that's a sad, would be a benefit, definitely a benefit for everyone to have the Sugar Hills Trail and a safe place to walk, bike, jog, and those kinds of things. There are significant changes that's out of character in that 4.25 miles. In this whole 4.25 miles, there is not one turn lane, not even on County Road 71. From here all the way to here, there's not one turn lane. Okay, there's a turn lane here, and the turn lane to come into this beautiful facility right here, as you can see it. There's 78 driveways, shared driveways, approaches. There's 2 tar roads that don't have that, streets. So this development is out of character for the area and what people wanted. It eliminates expenditures from an existing resident, that put our concrete right up to the approach. It removes a buffer from that existing resident. It changes the setting, and it allows this process where we spend a lot of time and money, community feedback, all the hearings and everything you guys have to do, which we're learning about here. But all of that 2040 plan that we guys did, we're gonna put it aside, and we're gonna let an application, a process, a developer, and investor change our ordinance for this development and set that aside, and it sets a really strong precedence, and it's not a good one.
Before you go on, man, Beth, explain this so we get this aired out here on this 2040 comp plan, okay?
So the 2040 comp plan guides this area for agriculture use, right? That allows for the protection of open space. It also allows for working agricultural land. The associated zoning district with that land use category is typically the A2 district. That allows single-family homes as a permitted use. On this site, the density is a maximum of 1 per 10. 1 unit per 10 acres is the maximum you're allowed. That allows this site to have 14 lots. That's what's proposed. So this does not go against the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan, both in terms of density and in terms of what it's doing as far as preserving the natural resources by clustering those lots to the north.
So the maximum on the 2040 plan is 1 per 10 acres.
Yes.
And this is within the 10 acre lot, because you got 14 homes on it. This is 14 homes. This is one thing I want to clarify here, is because I read this too, by the way. And I mean, you know, it's the 1 per 10, and then this is a planned unit development. So it's still 14, and the lesser of all the lots is 1.78 acres. Okay, it's just under 2, which is like about 80,000 square feet. So, and on the top one, I think is 27.27 acres. So, and an acre is 43,560 square feet. So you're not city lots. I mean, a city lot is just under 11,000 square feet, okay? So about 10,780, I think it is. I know I live on a 13,000 square foot, so these lots, even the smallest lot is 7-8 times bigger than what I have. So I'm just saying to you, just to clarify out there, it's not a city lot. The smallest lot is 1.78 acres. Of course, and the reason these lots are bigger is because you have to have an alternative septic site to the primary site. So they're all bigger on just that. So it goes from 1.78 up to 27.27. Another thing I just want to mention here, as you mentioned, you're concerned about wildlife, you know, and wetlands. This one plan, as I mentioned before, as those gentlemen got up, is this plan is the one thing that designates a conservation area in perpetuity and leaves the wetland area alone. Any other one, it's a fill-in of the wetland, and you lose that. This you don't.
Not completely. Some of those far lots down in there would encroach upon it there. Some of those.
Is that true?
There is a portion of the wetland on that, let me see if I can find another picture. On the furthest lot to the south, lot 9, I believe. So, yeah, so if you can see on that, so this lot 9, the larger lot 9, snakes through here. So there is a portion that would be within the wetland right there. But the house for lot.
But not the
9
buildable part of it.
Well, there's a buildable part to the north, which attaches to the cul-de-sac. There is upland over here as well, on the west side.
And that would ever be approved to build on?
So it's part of lot 9, so. Yeah, it could be, the idea is that the house would be placed near the cul-de-sac, that you don't have to cross the wetland and fill that in.
And that's the only lot that interferes with that wetland.
I mean, there is the wetland that comes through these lots, but those are, I mean, there's wetlands on lots.
Well, that's no different than drainage easements on lots too, by the way. You buy a lot, you buy a lot that you think is bigger, but there's a drainage easement on it, doesn't make it a whole lot. I mean, a drainage easement can't be dealt, can't be changed or modified for drainage. All right, just some clarification as you go on here, because.
Yeah, it's just, we're, you know, it is, they're asking for, there's variances being requested, so you wouldn't have to do variances, and when you have 10-acre parcels, you have a lot of green space in between, and this group of people love space, and they like, conservation, like nature, so this also would impact the livelihood of farmers and how the property would be reused, but on slide 6, Rebecca's going to talk, because she lives right here. And so she's going to talk about her concerns that haven't been addressed yet.
Okay, so I live at, Rebecca Curtis, I live at 6481 Ambassador Boulevard Northwest, which is directly across the street from the proposed development. I'm sorry, this is a lot. So this property or this proposal is going to significantly impact me in more ways than one. One is the curbside appeal, having County Road 28, 100, well, it's currently like 140 feet from my house. We're gonna add a bypass lane plus the angle of the road, and then I'm gonna be 60 feet from the road. I'm below grade, that's gonna be a potentially dangerous situation for me. It's going to make it really hard to create a buffer from the road. Any kind of trees, especially in a below grade situation, any kind of trees is gonna make it really hard for me to see out of my driveway to turn safely onto the road. There's accidents on several of like either side of this S curve over here. I've had an accident directly across the street where the proposed entrance into this neighborhood is already. So there are dangers in putting extra roads there, even though the bypass lane and the turn lane are meant to create a safer environment. It's not really that much safer on an east to west road when the bypass lane is also a turn into my driveway. I could be using the bypass lane to turn into my driveway. Somebody thinks I'm using it as a bypass lane. They don't see that I'm slowing down. I get creamed. A very scary thought. And then I also have to make a left, if I'm going west, I have to make a left-hand turn into my driveway, and with one lane of cars is already kind of scary. It's a steep, sharp turn. I have to go slow to take that turn. And if, you know, they come flying over the hill, that could be a potential issue, especially if I'm pulling a trailer. And then I'd have to cross 4 lanes of traffic to get my mail. So I mean, there's a lot of issues with the proposed road restructuring. There's also going to be an increased amount of headlight pollution coming from that development, and it's going to shine into my house every day. In the winter time, this is going to suck because it's dark all the freaking time. It goes directly into my upstairs window. And that's 14 houses worth of cars, most people having 2 cars, people having kids. The amount of people coming to and from their houses is going to be a lot of traffic and noise and light pollution into my house.
But man, if you was 14 lots with 14 10-acre lots, then that's not a problem. It's only a problem with the way it's subdivided right now. I mean, you're telling me that headlights and all that stuff is pertinent, but 14 10-acre lots you're fine with. The 14 lots that are from 1.78 up to 27.27,
Well,
you're
we're
not.
saying that if there's the wetland space, we're thinking that if you had less houses in this area, not like if in a perfect world, if that was all buildable and it wasn't wetlands, there would be a bigger difference between being able to space out the houses. Yes, it would still, the traffic would still be an issue. That part wouldn't change if you cut 14 houses. We can reduce that and reduce having the amount of houses clustered if you have it all spaced out where there's 5, maybe 6 houses.
Yeah, but
But the developers would still have the option to possibly fill in the wetlands at any given time, still put 14 on that.
And that would again bring up the noise and traffic issue.
right.
The amount of houses, regardless, like the proposed development as it is, with the amount of houses as it is the amount of traffic that's going to go past my house that's never going to change unless they reduce the number of houses that they
But the
have.
2040 comp plan is 1 per 10 acres up to 14. This plan calls for 14. It's just the size of the lots aren't 10 acres. They're 1.78 up to 27.27. So it's still 14 houses. That's all there is. Whether it's on 10 acre designated 10-acre lots or on the breakdown I just mentioned, it's still 14. That's all there is. So the headlights on 10 acres of land versus on 1.7 acres of land is still the same headlights. I mean, I'm just saying to you, I understand your concern, but it's
Yeah,
14 is 14.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying that with how they have it set up with that number of houses will create a high influx of traffic past there. If they did less houses, not if they spread out the houses, I'm saying if they did less houses overall, they kept the wetlands, they had less houses overall, there's half the amount of traffic. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not
Okay,
saying that, I'm not disagreeing.
Because I
with-
think she's saying something, if I'm right, her concept plan B was like, was that 6 houses or something like that?
Mayor, so that,
It didn't work.
Well, they are allowed by our comp plan and our code right now to have 14 lots on the site. It is up to the property owner how many lots they would like to put on that site. They're allowed up to 14.
All right, and this conservation area cannot be touched in perpetuity, right? Am I right on this, gentlemen?
Correct.
Okay, and your idea of the wetland is, what is your idea for a future of the wetland?
Well, the wetland, what we have proposed is a easement 20 feet beyond the wetland to help protect the wetland, an additional conservation easement. And on our plans, we propose 0 wetland impacts.
Because wetlands are important.
And yeah, in wetland, like an individual cannot fill wetlands. If it's a private landowner, you cannot fill wetlands. You get in trouble for filling wetlands. Obviously, some people do, but we're staying away from all the wetlands.
And this one design that you have, as I mentioned before, locks those 2 properties pretty much up. The conservation area perpetuity cannot be touched, and then this wetland cannot be touched. Individual, right.
Correct.
Because a concern of you, by the way, is your wildlife. Concern for wildlife and that is in this, what he's saying is addressing that. All right, or wrong?
Correct. So basically, the plan shows outlot A, which is, I don't know, is that 60 some acres? Well, actually, all the lots in the wetland, in block 2, there's far more being preserved by our plans because we're dedicating public drainage and utility easements far beyond the wetlands. We're actually, I don't know what the actual area calculation is, but I'm guessing we're saving 80 some acres.
Right, but it's also kind of, the reason I bring this up to council is like a drainage easement on a lot, a city lot. A drainage can be part of your land as far as a bigger lot, and real estate agents will sell all your size of your lot, but that drainage easement cannot be touched or tampered or damaged in any way.
There will be a drainage and utility easement. That's what I was showing up here. Let's see the text. That covers the wetland itself as well as the wetland buffer, which is a 20-foot strip beyond.
And protects the wetland.
That is the intent. That's the purpose of that.
But as I'm trying to wait to these people, a drainage easement on a city lot cannot be adjusted, tampered with at all. It's there for a purpose for drainage. It may be part of the land that you bought, but it's not to be restructured or rechanged or anything like that. It cannot be changed. So that's what this is talking about here. The wetland can't be changed.
Yeah, and Graham, the developer knew who was buying when he purchased this land, but what I'm saying though is, like, if this is not uncommon for somebody to buy some property, but there's wetland on your property, and so to say like, well, we're gonna combine them all so that we can conserve it. This is what the A2 zone is that you buy the land and there's wetland on your land and you have to stay off it. That's why we say minimum of 10 acres to do that. I farm this here, and on the southernmost part of my property that I farm is wet. I can't get that because that's wet. It doesn't show on their plan that it's actually wet there, but it's encroaches further. But regardless of that, but when we all buy property out there, we understand that we buy property, you buy 10 acres, some of it is wetland, you can't touch it. Granted, they're trying to do this so that they can cluster some houses. That's why they want the zone changing. We're asking, put 10 houses on there, but keep the zoning as it is. It was set 1 per 10, keep it 1 per 10. That's what we're just asking. It was approved. We're just asking the city council to uphold the standards that we all purchased on and that you signed off on. That's all we're asking.
Okay. you know, I understand exactly what you're saying, and the council's been approached on this for other developments that we've heard, by the way. I mean, so let me ask you this, sir, how long have you lived here?
How long, in the area or on this property?
Well, give me one of both.
8 years on this property, 44 years total. I grew up on a farm just adjacent to this.
Okay. So 44 years in total, 8 years on this property, okay?
Correct.
And and I'm just trying to figure this out here, because, you know, and for council's sake too, by the way, the 2040 plan that we worked on started when? So when did we start working on it?
2018,
2018,
correct.
okay? And it got filed in 2020, okay? So when you bought it 8 years ago, the 2040 plan wasn't even in conceptual thinking yet.
No, but it still was minimum of 10 acres out there at that time. It still had to be minimum of 10 acres. Ever since I've lived in this area, it's always been minimum of 10 acres, always. So that hasn't changed. That even if the comp plan did say it, city ordinance says it had to be at least 10 acres on this side of Sealy Brook. That's always been the case.
Okay,
Mayor, council, so again, with the comp plan, the 1 in 10 acres is the in net density. So you can look around the other parts of the city and there's a smaller lot, I want to say to the west of this even, that is less than 10 acres. It was divided at one point. However, if that parcel was to come forward and want to subdivide further, that land is taken into consideration. So that parcel's already taken 5 acres and said, okay, here's one of our 10, 1 per 10. So it's the net density. This is very common all over the city. We've done this. We've got these developments that have continually moved out in the same fashion as we're doing tonight. So it's not uncommon, but it's that overall net density, whether they put 10 or 14, 10 acres, or they put 14 in a cluster, this property owner is allowed 14 properties on his 147 acres.
and then let me ask you a question. If this development were to go through, how does this affect the farming for everyone and people listening out there? Are you gonna be affected by it?
Yes, it would be.
How?
Oh, so now I have safety concerns. I got little kids playing right next to my field. Toys out there, wrecking my equipment. What if I run over a kid in the tractor? I farm at night. So a lot of times. So do I have to now watch out who I'm gonna run over out there? If I put cattle out there, do I have to watch out that the kids aren't gonna get electrocuted on the electric fence? There's a host of things. Now if I go spread manure out there, they're gonna come say, hey, that thing stinks over there. I don't want it here. People that live in rural areas understand that this is part of it. That's why you spread the houses out. Those are just a couple of the points. And that I had, with that page that I had, but it would hugely affect that. If I want to put it
Sir, to
here.
be honest with you, that's a far-reaching point.
No, it's not.
That's like saying to me that I live on a street here, and if they put a stoplight here, I'm gonna get more traffic, I'm gonna get accidents here. If I walk across the street, I'm gonna get accidents. I'm not trying to justify it at all, but what I'm saying to you is try to bring up reasonable problems that we can grasp reasonably, okay? Not something, like we've had one development here in the past year on agritourism that said there was gonna be more toilet paper flying around, more this flying around, more that flying around. I mean, try to make it reasonable so we can comprehend the reason behind it. Not just some far-fetched, well, the rural world's gonna cave in and fall. It's not.
It's not, but we have had people, and I have had farmers bail up toys in their equipment. I've had people do that. We've had people come to that. So there is some things that we have to be concerned about, because there is gonna be, with this cluster of houses, there are gonna be complaints that I'm out there farming after hours. What do you mean? Oh, yeah, sure. And then for me to spread fertilizer or herbicides, that has to stay a minimum distance from private wells. So now that's gonna affect where I can fertilize or how close I can fertilize to the edge of my property. That is real. And companies will not come and spread fertilizer knowing that there's houses that close or wells that close. That's a big deal. That would take out a lot of my property to not be able to fertilize. Those are just some of the things that are real and will happen on that. And I don't think the city council can guarantee that there's not going to be any impact on my farming practices. There's no way that you can do that.
So,
What page are you on?
so there's one on farming, but I do want to make mention on slide 10, you guys, was a late night, late weekends, I had a calculation, a typo on slide 10 and slide 11, it's the reduction.
Page, what is that, page what
Page
now?
10,
Okay.
it's actually on page 8 too, but on page 10, you know, the going to 1.10 to 1.78 is an 82% reduction on kind of what we are. You know, I know that there's a lot of lots, but you have 13 that are under 8, 12 under 7, 10 under 5.63, 9 under 8.2, and 4 under 1.97. And then the lot width is a lot different. That's on slide.
140 versus 300.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was,
146, that's right.
yeah, it was 82% instead of for the reduction, and then for the other one, it's more like 50%. Sorry about that. I don't know why I didn't, we all didn't see that.
Did it backwards. Yeah.
I think so. We stayed up all night trying to just make sure that we had everybody's feedback in here. The PUD, I know it was mentioned on here that we saw the plans for the turn lane.
We're on page 12 for those who don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Page 12. But before we get to that, I know that on here, this lot right here in the corner, it's been on all the decks on, you know, making sure there's no noise and light pollution. To your point, Mr. Mayor, you know, there's been a lot of concern over this lot and making sure there's a berm, making sure there's light and noise and things are considered for this resident that's not here yet. But this resident, there was mentioned in the last presentation that they would reach out and share and try to figure out something so that, you know, that we worked out, nothing has been done there so far. It changes the character. The bypass lane hasn't even been drafted out. You saw the turn lane right here, but not the bypass lane. There's a lot of questions that we've had on where things fit. There's the big Sugar Hill Trails that connects all the sister cities together, hasn't been addressed at all, and that needs to be addressed. And what happens with all of that? This current investor we purchased from, she purchased from, has page 13, thank you, has followed the 1 in 10 acres in the past. And there's just this last development, and I feel that there's ways and Mayor and Council, we want growth. We just want it in the right way and with the acreage. Wetlands can stay wetlands, or federally, state, and locally protected. And when you have big groups of place, and you talk about wildlife, it's easier and less impactful for wildlife to navigate large parcels and move around than one big group. We're not an rural area or urban area, and we know that there's sometimes that makes a lot more sense, you know, to reserve space when there's a lot of homes. But here, there's a lot of acreage, and we could have people have executive level homes, you know, with some more acreage.
If you're going to page 14, that's where you can kind of get that visual of how my driveway looks right now with the current road. The bypass is going to, at minimum, touch where, if not go into, where that roundabout circle is at the bottom. I spent $20,000 on my driveway this year. So like that would need to get reversed. But if you look at how close my house is to the road as it is, imagine it closer.
How much closer are we talking?
It's going to at least go into or touch. It's gonna basically touch the length of the driveway.
Mayor and Council, so the Ambassador Boulevard is a county road. Any of the street improvements cannot go outside the existing right of way. So as you can see on page 14, the tan,
Yeah.
you'll see there's kind of how the property goes up and then it indents up kind of to a curve. That is when Green Valley developed the first 40 acres. The same development team did that for 40, divided it into the 3 lots. That bump out was required by Anoka County for transportation, and if another road, the salt, was to continue to the north, that is the path it would take with that right-of-way bump right there.
So as it is, that, with that bump there, if you follow that line that parallels the road, that's where it's gonna be. That's pretty freaking close. Yeah.
Is that the county, that's the county easement then? Is that white
The
line
county
and then
right
it
of
bumps?
way on that, yeah, it goes up to the north.
Okay. So that, from the road to that white line is the county easement that they have already?
Yes. Correct, and that's why they required her driveway come off of that point to not create any additional individual access points. What Anoka County is trying to do is get as many of these access with the multi-home kind of concept, like a major road.
She's mentioned a roundabout, there, but we're not looking at a roundabout. Right
No.
there, right?
Anoka County is requesting a westbound bypass and an eastbound turn lane. That,
But this picture on the right is the way it is now,
Correct.
yes.
and the picture on the left, this white line here, that's
The county.
That is the
right of way.
county.
right away.
Correct.
So that, what the county wants to do cannot go into her property at all, not beyond that line,
Not beyond that white line.
beyond that white.
They would, correct, Anoka, any road improvements would stay within the road's right of way property.
She's talking about the first,
Right, so it can stay on here, but it can't go over here.
right, her driveway too, where it goes.
Mr. Mayor, they'll bump the pavement out 12 feet for the bypass lane and 12 feet for the right turn.
But they'll be in there right away.
Yes.
But it'll be about 12 feet from the existing lane and parallel. Both sides.
So from that white line that I'm seeing there, it'll be 12 feet away from that.
Not the white line, 12 feet from the existing pavement.
12 feet closer to her house.
Well, it'd be a little bit more than 12 feet though, because the road is to be 12 feet, and then you have to take in consideration the hill that slopes down, so if somebody loses control, now they're that much closer to my house.
Which the whole reason for that bypass lane is if someone's turning into the development, so they can swerve off into the bypass lane. Well, by swerving off into the bypass lane, they're 20 right at her house. And the road is at least 6 feet above her driveway, so if someone goes off the road, they're not stopping, they're going right at her house. It's more than space. But yeah, I can stand there and the road's definitely above my head when I stand on her driveway.
We just make sure we get everyone's name and address if they're going to address the city
Yeah,
council.
name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Scott Curtis, 25155 Long Street, on Rebecca's farm.
All I'm saying is the pavement, yes, so we work beyond that, the slopes, but the pavement will be, that's their design standard, 12 feet.
Which I think if you look at that picture, you can see that 12 feet closer to her house. At that elevation is,
Well, it's closer to the driveway, not the house.
well, it's closer to the house too, closer to the house.
Well, the house is right here. As I'm looking at this right here, am I not? Am I seeing this house? Am I, on this picture wrong? I got this house right here.
50 feet off the road. The house is running right now. The driveway is parallel. to the road.
Right, the driveway's parallel, but the house is here.
And the bypass lane will be basically between the driveway and the road.
Is that southern, like where it comes, if you went from her driveway and went straight south, that would be where the road would be?
It's right.
Mayor, Council, correct. So that bump, again, Anoka County trying to align our whole north-south system. That bump out in that brown picture is where if you head south would be the development to the south now.
Okay, so yeah, that's what.
So the bypass lane has to be before that bump out in order to allow for enough space for somebody to turn into the development, because that bump out is to the, if you're looking at it, south of that bump out is the entrance to the development. So it have to go in front of now.
But we haven't seen, Mayor Council, we haven't seen any plans, just this plan was the only one we've ever seen, we've never seen the other plan. When you go, west from the road, and you go west from the road here, and you go down, the turn lane is down, so you go down, it's at a pitch and an incline, it's very difficult to navigate. And so it's just, it's a busier intersection, it's a busier area, and it's that much closer, and plus when you're at 8 feet or whatever it is, you have to have the base, you have to have the material, you have to have the slope, and so there is a lot of concerns, there's safety concerns that people have.
What I'm not understanding here is, forgive me for being stupid here, but if it's 14 10-acre lots, or 14 from 1.78 up to 27.27, it's still 14. Is it still gonna be the bypass and everything else that's still gonna be there, right? So what changes? I mean, other than the size of the lot, everything else is the same. I'm trying to follow this.
Right, but the plans haven't been there, we haven't been brought in, there's plans for the turn lane, there's not plans for the bypass. There's plans to protect this person right here from noise and light pollution, but not here. There's just, it just feels a little lopsided, right? It just, we're raising concerns and safety concerns. Yes, some of them would be there. But if we were 10-acre lots, right, and we have to work within our means, work within the ability of what our land that we purchased, that we knew what we were purchasing, then if there's a lot of wetlands, this would stay wetlands, it stays federally protected. Maybe,
Not necessarily.
Well, like you say, they can pay for credits and get wetlands somewhere else, but like you say, the wetlands are important. If you get rid of the wetlands here, you get rid of the wetlands here, they might put them in Aiken County or something, but you lose the wetlands here, and the reason why they made these rules is to try to keep this here. And if you look at where the development is, it's like you're in an in-town lot, and then all the rest of that land is preserved. That wetland back there, plus the outlot, there's only one lot that has at least 10 acres on it. That's the one that happens to have a permanent deer stand and a big, huge food plot around it. So if they keep that lot, they can enjoy 100 acres back here while everybody else is cramming on top of themselves on 50 acres, including the neighbors around them. And that just doesn't seem to be part of the neighborhood. It's kind of like putting a size 14 foot in a size 6 shoe. Yes, legally you can make that work, but it's not right to fill in wetlands. That's why they have laws protecting them.
So I'm just want to clarify it from what it seems like. Yes, we're talking about the if we're going to maintain the wetlands, what they could, based off the size of the plot, put 14 houses on. We're saying that if you do it correctly, where you keep the wetlands, and then you honor the 5-acre lots, they're taking 10-acre lot, there'd be less houses than 14. Is what we were getting at, is not trying to restructure so that there are 14 houses on here no matter what. When we're saying honor the 10 acres, the 1 house per 10 acres, it's taking that cut and doing less houses.
But it's 14 houses. I mean, no, trust me here, I mean, the 2040 plan says this guy can put in 14 houses on 10-acre lots. Am I right on this? 14 times 10, right?
That's right.
Okay, and so now he's not doing that. He's gonna give a conservation area and a wetland area, right? And he's still gonna do 14 homes, which the 2040 plan says can do. It's just not gonna be 10-acre plan. It's gonna be 1.78 up to 27.1. I'm trying to ball this in a sensible situation here. But what I don't understand is it's 14 is 14.
Flexibilities from the zoning code that they're asking tonight is lot area and lot width. Those are the only flexibilities they're asking for from the zoning code. There are other flexibilities they're asking for from the subdivision code, which relate to that road being narrower and longer.
Right, otherwise.
My question, I guess, would be, it's a different way to say what you're saying, but it's whether it's 14 on a small portion, or they spread it out and they decide to fill in the wetlands, do all this stuff. Because to me, I'm a huge fan of property rights, right? Whatever you do on your property, I don't want anything to do with it, it's yours, right? That's kind of the stance, and I differ with some of the people up here, you know, sometimes. But that's where it comes in to me is whether it's 14 on a small portion or 14 on a large portion, and they decide to fill in those wetlands. Who am I to tell them? I mean, if we say we can't do this, then they decide to fill in the wetlands, now you're losing the wetlands, it's still 14. The complaints that we've heard so far, how does that change if a developer so chooses to put 14 on a larger portion or a smaller portion? How much of your concerns changes? The headlight pollution would be the same. You know, less houses, that's kind of beyond us as far as I'm concerned. You know, the curb and the bypass stuff, that would stay the same, whether they did it with big lots or not. The bypass lane, unfortunately, would still be there. There's a lot of things that so far, I do want to applaud you guys for putting in the work and the stuff that you guys did. I know when we started, I went out and printed a sheet of paper. I was very ignorant of what I was talking about. I had no idea. I went and passed it out to a bunch of people, didn't understand that there was between Met Council and City Sewer and Water, and learned the hard way that I didn't know what I was talking about. Came back in 2 weeks with a lot more knowledge. But the work you put in, I do appreciate it. I admire that you guys put this much effort into it too. But that's where I'm wondering is, what is the difference based on the concerns that have been presented so far? Maybe there's more too.
Right.
And I understand, you know, the concern with the farmland and whatnot. And that to me, that's a hard one for me too.
Right.
Where is it your responsibility to put a fence up to keep people out of your yard from now until then? Or is it the other people's responsibility? I mean, it should be obviously whoever's kid it is to keep them out of your yard, in my opinion too, but you do have that land, and whether there's 14 houses spread out or 14 houses close by, it would be the same scenario, or a similar scenario. It might be less kids per acre, whatever, along certain sides of it. And I can understand that, but that's where it's like, what is the difference between the cluster or the spread out? As far as all of these concerns, it'd still be the same amount of traffic, same amount of just about everything so far.
What you would have is different would be, as I believe, is because we're agricultural, what you would have different is in more of a street closer to the city, or even if it's not urban, where you'd put a city street, a full city street, full city sidewalk, and all that, just like all these other roads that don't have turn lanes. Put a county road in there, that basically you're trying to put a road in here in an agricultural zone where typically you would have one driveway. And I get it. You don't want to have multiple driveways going into acreage lots. So that's why they're trying to put a road in there. I get that.
Well, that's the county.
That's, but what they're asking to do is take ag land and make it urban. In the sense that we're trying to put a street in there, but we're gonna try to say like, oh, let's keep it small and not do side. They're basically trying to plow a development into acre land. Yes, if you had that, you would not do a development like this in agricultural area. You do it more in an area where the lots are smaller, and that you put a city street in there, curb gutter and all that. That's the difference. We're trying to put half urban, half rural in this area to try to get a street in there. And so it's not.
I guess what I'm wondering, I mean, I understand.
Does that make sense?
Her goal is to lower the amount of houses put in there, because hopefully things are done the way that you would prefer, right, where you have less houses. And that's, to me, that's, well, a little bit, because she wants less houses, and I'm not trying to, don't take me the wrong way, please.
Like, because if there were less, then there wouldn't be.
Right.
Like
But that's beyond us, and that's completely, I mean, if the developer has that land and chooses to do whatever they do with it, they can still have 14. So I'm thinking of, I mean, as far as what are we even able to address as far as concerns, because the developer still has the ability, they want to pay the money to fill it in, they could, they may, unless the goal is to stop it from happening because you don't, well, I'm not trying to badmouth or assume anything. I'm just trying to clarify something, because we have limited ability regardless of what we do here too.
Correct.
So I'm just wondering if these concerns have to line up almost with something that is addressable between whether it's clustered or spread out. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, we're just saying, keep it 1%.
And so
Which,
if you do that,
again,
Joe, if it's 1/10, it's still 14.
right,
That's
that's what I'm
fine.
saying,
You
though,
still
it's
get a
still,
road. I mean, if it's.
I know it'd be a
it
different. road.
it turns into,
How-
perspective and
how would it be
semantics.
different?
It could be because they're asking, I believe they're asking to do just a smaller road without the sidewalks and curb and gutter and all that, whereas.
Based on rural standards versus urban. standards.
Correct, yes, correct. So if you're gonna put an urban type of road in there, do it all up. Do it all up, but still keep it 1/10 and that. So I just.
So you want bigger lots, so you
Well,
prefer bigger lots.
Yeah, that's what we all bore the burden of purchasing. We paid for 10 because we had to. And now somebody else is gonna come and say like, well, I get to do a smaller lot, even though, well, it averages out. We bought one for
There is
10.
one of
We
the
bore
areas,
that
like-
burden, and now we should have the benefit of that, to have that, the benefits of that 1/10 that that we purchased on. And we purchased on these, and everybody that bought this knew that's what the rules were, and we are trying to change the zoning. They are trying to change the zoning, that's the.
So let me ask you this then. So if they were to take this road, okay, based on
Mhm.
14 homes, whether 1.78 up to 10 acres or whatever, and they put this road in, but instead of on urban standards, instead of suburban, rural standards, they did on urban standards with sidewalks and curb and all that, you'd be fine with that?
No, but it still wouldn't fit in there, because you have to still change the zoning on it. You'd have to change the zoning on this whole land here, and I'm just saying that, I understand what they're trying to do, because it's cheaper that way, but this would not fly in there, because you would not put that in there with, unless it was 1/10, yeah. Follow through and put 14 houses all the way through.
So if you had 14 homes, one on 10 acres in this section of 146 acres, okay?
Mhm.
If you had 1/10 and a road, the road would still be a rural road, no sidewalk, no curb, okay? And not paved, it'd probably be gravel. So is that would be permissible to you?
It would be better for him, like, let me point out his house and see how much of an impact this is. This is his house right there. His main windows face that way. So looking out, if they were 1/10, he'd see two houses out there. Right now, he's gonna look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's gonna see 10 or 12 houses. The rest of them will be all spread out here, but yet he's gotta bear the burden of having that many houses outside the biggest windows, and I think it's 2 stories, all glass room that you have facing that direction, isn't it?
Yeah, but I can't argue on that, because I chose to do that. So that's just,
Right.
but I'm just saying that we bore the burden of having 1/10. And that's the aesthetics and the conservation that we bore, that we purchased on, and that we bought, knowing that we would expect that to continue. And then that would just force less houses to be less dense. Correct?
Well, I'll tell you where you're lucky, that MUSA isn't running there, the municipal urban service area, because then you'd have 4 lots per acre. Okay, then you'd really be here complaining, okay? So I mean, let's be honest here, I mean, then you'd have 4 lots per acre. Okay,
Correct, I know.
and 140 acres, you'd have homes on homes on homes,
Right,
okay? So, all right, so let me ask you, Kate, you have something to
Mayor and
say?
Council, so I know we've gone over several of the concerns, but I really want to bring it back to what we're really here asking for approvals. So this landowner has met the comprehensive plan. They are asking for a rezoning to a PUD. This allows the cluster. If they were creating a development in which the road was 1,500 feet and there were 1 unit per 10 acres, and they didn't request a rural standards for their roads, they wouldn't be here arguing many of these points, because it would be allowed. So what they're here before us tonight and they're requesting is, 1, the ability to rezone it to a PUD to approve the cluster development. 2, the preliminary plat approval, which is the overall, what their step is tonight. The variance for the temporary dead end narrower than 32 feet. And I want to point out, this is a temporary dead end. If the properties to the south were to develop in any way, this road is an extension. This is a temporary dead end. They're requesting it at 1,900 feet instead of 1,500 feet, which is our typical. The rural road standards are because we're not requesting the sidewalk, and we're not asking for curb and gutter at this time. If the development to the south was to become something someday, we may need that curb and gutter. At this point, for this development, for this current step we're taking tonight, those are really the three things we're looking for. A rural road, not, or longer than 1,500 feet, narrower than 32 feet, and rezoning it to a
And when
PUD.
you say narrower than 32, what is that, 26?
I believe it's 26, I can double check that for you. So it's a 66-foot right of way. I need to grab another plan.
And were they required to pave it, or could they have made that a gravel?
No, this is required to be paved. The pavement would be 24 feet.
24. And paved, the whole 19.
Correct.
You know, I have to say here, you know, I want council to have theirs, of course, but I have a concern here on the county side of it. You know, with their bypassing and that road. I mean, you know, we have no control of the county. But if the county looked at this in a different light, I mean, have they seen it or whatever? I mean, they come out here and they tell me the height difference in her property to the road itself. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me.
So Mayor and Council, Anoka County is the one that approved the driveways for the properties to the north, those individual driveways. They approved the subdivision to the north to create those 3 lots. This Green Valley is not the last property that's going to develop along Ambassador. And I suspect each one of these properties that develop along Ambassador to create a new city street is going to require some type of turn lane and bypass until Ambassador is of a size where someday it may be 4 lanes wide. So I think in the reality of it, as our city grows and the growth continues to the west, it's gonna be a bypass and a turn lane until the road really demands some type of intersection controls or even more. So this is the next phase from the last development. And that's what they're requesting at this time. But Anoka County is the one who has approved all of the driveways to the north, and they are requiring the turn lane and the bypass lane. So they are aware of all of those parameters.
Okay, Kevin, do you have any comments at this time that you've been taking notes on?
Not really. I'm just abstaining until it's time to vote. I can see where the density situation is. That's where my stumbling block was to begin with. I've driven out there 4 times already, up and down the street. To me, again, facts aside and ordinances aside, it doesn't fit there to me. Now, if there's something bigger, and I can see, I came from the country as well. And 1 house per 10 acres is awesome. The houses out there are awesome. But if our 2040 says per net density, which means he can do what he can do, it's just whether we have the power of the pen to say, we don't want to do that at this time, or we can vote our feelings at that point. But, you know, as far as, I talked to Kate earlier about the conservation easement, again, a man's property is a man or person and woman's property. The conservation easement, to me, that's kind of a hooey. It's gonna be a visual thing. It's there now, it'll be there. If this goes through, it'll be there anyway, but who's gonna get to use it? It won't be for the city's benefit. It won't be for the residents' benefit. It won't be for the people who already live there. So, I'm taking on my emotions aside, but the facts remain that, to me, it doesn't belong there. It'd be an oasis. The one gentleman said it's just out there all by itself. Now, sometime it might come sooner. There'll be more stuff coming through. Again, we don't always agree on everything here at the front desk here, but, to me, it's gonna be just an oasis out there. And I don't know if it belongs. It does have a rural feel, and some of these things we've talked about earlier, the rural feel in some areas. I live in an area that used to be a farmer's area as well. Our lots are anywhere from 2.5 up to 7.5. And you go up around Roanoke, those are what, 2.5 acre lots up in there, and some of those areas there. So you can talk about the semantics of math and density and whatnot, but again, legally he could do that if we change it to a PUD. My feelings aren't that way right now.
I don't know yet.
The way I feel is, I agree with Joe a lot about, a person can do with the property that they want. But this development, in my eye, it looks like we want to get the most value for the best piece of property. And to me, I agree with Kevin, it doesn't fit. I understand what you're saying. You want to do 10 acres on a buildable piece and they keep the wetlands preserved. You might get 5 houses down that road. I'm not for changing variances to put a 28 or 26-foot road where it should be a 32-foot road. You're turning in and out of a county road with a turn lane, with a bypass lane to a 24-foot or 26-foot road when it should be 32. If it stinks, it stinks. And this one does for me, so I would have to, I think, wait for a vote.
Okay, any more comments from your side?
I have a question for Mr. Neilbauer real quick.
Yeah.
On your statement of letting property owners kind of do what they want out there. My family owns the 200 acres on the west of there and on the north of there. So if I came with a very similar development plan and wanted to put the maximum amount of houses out there, are you saying you'd be okay with that too?
I can't say any of that, 'cause I have no idea what that
So
looks
it's
like.
exactly the same.
I'm a huge fan of property rights and personal property rights, so what that means is, I can't tell my neighbor that he can't do a certain thing on his property because I don't own that property, right?
Yeah,
So I own my property, that's it. There was the farm deal, agricultural tourism. To me, I didn't see an issue with it personally. Again, personal property rights, it's their land, the neighbors had issues with it. We didn't get that far right anyway with that. But the thing is your property is your property. Do you want your neighbor to tell you that you can't have certain lights on your property? Do you want your neighbor to, again, to me, it's the constitutional republic versus the democracy. Democracy says 51% can tell the 49 what to do. The constitutional republic defends the individual and their rights as well. So to me, that's where I lean more towards it. Bring anything forward that I have no idea what you're talking about, it's hard for me to comment on that because I haven't seen it. If it was something that was possible and, feasible, it'd have to be reviewed at that time. I mean, who knows with growth in the future?
Mayor, yeah, Carolyn Thompson, 6938 Ambassador Boulevard. Yeah, first of all, thank you for your patience with us. We're just residents and civilians trying to navigate through this legal process. This is new for us, so thank you for that. I guess a question I do have, so this would follow the comp plan. If the resolution to rezone. So you're asking for rezoning to follow the comp plan?
No,
No, you're asking for a PUD, which is,
Correct,
To change the zoning, the comp plan is followed either way.
right.
yeah.
So you're asking for three resolutions, to rezone the area for PUD, of land use development, and for variances on the road, correct? Correct. So I have some concerns with the wetland area that you mentioned. It is a wetland, and he could pay the wetland credits to build on it. He's chosen to use it as a wetland conservation area. And that is supposed to be the main public benefit for the PUD. That's a wetland area. And so one of my concerns as a resident of the city is what's in the easement agreement. And looking at the working draft of the easement agreement, you will see that there's the bundle of rights for property owners: possession, enjoyment, control, disposal, and exclusion. If I was to have those bundle of sticks here, and I'm concerned with this because the city is a stakeholder in this, because page 16. Oh, sorry.
Page 16.
The city is a stakeholder in the easement agreement. If you look at, you were at the working draft in front of you. The bundle of property rights is mainly held by the grantor. They would hold the right to control, the right to enjoy, the right to exclude, which they have stated they will exclude everybody,
the public, and the right to possess the title. The shared bundle, or excuse me, the shared individual right would be the right to dispose. That has to be an agreement with the city and the grantor. So between the grantor and the grantee, they have to agree on the disposal. Since the grantor has the right to exclude the public, I do not see the public benefit. Since the grantor has the right to enjoy it to himself, all it would take is for one of the investors to keep lot 8 or 9 up there, one of the lots, and that grantor would have full access to what is considered the conservation area that is supposed to be the public benefit. I do not see a public benefit in that. And if that is supposed to be the reason for the PUD, for the PUD, that is not a good reason. And so I'm concerned with that. So I encourage you to look at the working draft of the easement agreement. The other thing in the working draft of the easement agreement is section B8. The easement, conservation easement was
What page are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies, sir. I don't have a lot of those things, but that's one of those. If you, yeah.
Mayor Council, I think she's talking about the easement agreement, which is something that would be finalized in the final plat. Correct. That was something that was drafted just so that staff have an understanding kind of how things would work. It's not something that's meant to be final at this time. So I know that there might be details that aren't,
And it might not be finalized,
but it's not final yet.
it is not finalized, but it's concerning what's in there. So, section B8 in the conservation easement, it states, grantor and grantee, and each of them acknowledge that this conservation easement and its reduction to the final written form is a result of extensive good faith negotiations between the grantor and the grantee, and or respective legal counsel, said legal counsel, and or parties carefully reviewed and examined this conservation easement for execution by the grantor and the grantee. And any statute or rule of construction that provides that ambiguities are to be resolved against the drafting party shall not be employed in the interpretation of the easement agreement. The reason I bring that up is because contract law, if you look at contract, I looked this up, contract pro per entium, it means interpretation against the drafter. And they have, so that if there was a dispute and a judge had a legal, had a dispute between the grantor and the grantee, and there was an ambiguous term in there, contract law says they would lean against the drafter. This asks to lean against the city. And that concerns me if the city is a stakeholder in the city agreement. So those are my concerns with the conservation easement. The other concern I have, if I may.
Yeah.
In the packet that was given to you by the city, on page 53, one of the concerns I have with the right turn lane is that the right turn lane needs an additional 10 feet to the south, an additional 300 feet to the
What page of the packet are you on?
53. It's an open highway department.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not our packet, Mayor. Not our packet. My bad. One of the concerns I have is that there would be a 10 additional feet that is needed. Now, it might be illegal, but I'm going to ask, is it ethical for one investor to benefit when this additional 10 feet to the south and 300 feet to the west would take an adjacent landowner's property for an easement? would be obviously a road easement. I know that would be legal, but when one investor would benefit and the adjacent landowner would be harmed, that to me would also be considered. Is that right, Tim?
I think too, I'm not a big fan of the easements and I hate, eminent domain personally myself. That's part of those easement stuff. If you say like it is, it's legal. But I understand what you're saying.
It is legal, but in this situation, is it ethical for one to benefit and another party to be harmed? That's what I have at this time. Thank you.
We have 10 to 12 people that want to talk. I just want to make sure everyone that came here to speak is able to.
Right, so let's do that.
We'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it
All
up.
right, wrap it up so we have other people coming to talk.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah. Put my name on the list.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jenny can start working through a list as written.
Name and address, please.
Name's Mike Rochova, address 235 Eagle, Nacre Street, St. Francis. I live not far from there. When I built my house, I've been there 33 years. It was one house for 10 acres and it works great. The neighbors are spread apart. And I like the rural area. I like the way it is. By Phil's there, if you were to build the way it is now, there would not be 14 houses in this. There's not 14 acres buildable unless they fill in swamp or granite, which I think would be legal. But I want to see it stay the way it is, one house per 10 acres size.
Thank you.
So I'll wrap it up here. I just want to let you know that I did talk to the neighbors and stuff like that. So those that live in the area and that are opposed to the standard raise your hand for this changing to a PUD.
Well, obviously, we knew that when you.
I know, but I just want you to know that this is what we, as your current residents, feel about it. And as our representatives, we're just asking you to see that asking you to represent us. That's all. So thanks, guys. Thank you so much. And Sarah, if you're listening.
Anybody else want to come forth and say anything?
Next to Bill.
Name and address, please.
My name is Rainey McAllister. I live at 6416 Ambassador. I'm right at Phil's, next door to Phil to the right. And I'm across from the three houses. Our land, my husband bought back in 2015 from Green Valley, 10 acres. The three houses across from us were all sold by Green Valley, 10 acres. Now they're asking to make small acres, which if you got wetland, you subtract the wetland, give it to the city, use it for a park if you want to benefit the people of the city, and then take the land that's left over after the 62 acres is subtracted, now divide that by 10-acre lots. That is benefiting me, my neighbors, the whole world in St. Francis. What he is doing is benefiting nothing but his pocketbook. And he doesn't live here. He bought the land after the ordinance of 10 acres was set aside. When he bought that land, he knew it. He sold my husband his land, knowing it. He sold the other acres, knowing it. They're all 10 acres. Now, all of a sudden, the market is good. He's trying to make a killing. Where is that benefiting any of us? I come from Wisconsin and I love walking. I can't even walk safely on Ambassador Boulevard. We don't have wide shoulders. You go to her house, and I even come to get into my driveway. If I don't wait till I'm over the knoll, I'm on a hill. Cars can come up by me going 55, 60, 65 miles an hour. And I have to watch it because if I turn too soon, there's an accident. Cars come up behind me at 4 o'clock bus time. When the sun is going down, you cannot see the cars coming towards you when you're going west. That is where you're looking at putting a bypass lane for her to turn into her driveway or for people to go around. You can't see that there's brake lights. It is nothing but a disaster to happen. We've already lost people with motorcycles this year. And when the bridge was down, the people that even just still came to turn around were tremendous amount. I could sit on my front door and watch them all. People that go through, I'm not from here, I use my GPS. If you put in on Google's map, anywhere from Zimmerman, Princeton, or any of those areas, and you want to get anywhere east, St. Francis and east, it all comes down Ambassador Boulevard. It doesn't take you down 95, which is a state road. It takes you all past Ambassador Boulevard, and it takes you down Bridgestone. It's very, well, no, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just my
No,
opinion, and I'm really worried
That's
about
what better
safety,
stuff.
because I can't even walk on the road, and I'm gonna be honest, I rode my bike to town once. I won't do it again. People, I ride looking at the traffic, people would move over for me, I gave them a thumbs up, and I'm gonna be very honest, the only person that did move over to me, for me, was a police officer.
Right,
Because you don't pay attention if you're looking at your monitor.
Mr. McCann, you got something to say? What happened, Ken?
Josh Salvador. And yeah, I live in Oak Grove. My kids go to St. Francis School. And we bought this property in 2013. So we've been here, well, right with Bill Waters' property. And we punted the property. My kids have shot their first deer on this property. And we're trying to preserve the property. Like, if you really look at where this easement is, this conservation easement, it's probably some of the most beautiful property in all of St. Francis. There's a ridge 30 feet in the air, okay, that's skies high, that if we were to develop this and come around that corner and come up to that ridge and put houses there, I mean, this is, like I said, some of the most beautiful property. There's, when you preserve a wetland, you talk about a pervious surface. When you put longer roads in, you have a pervious surface, which has water runoff, and the water runoff runs off into wetlands. Okay, so by doing cluster developments, you're limiting the impact of the wetlands by having less a pervious surface going in, and really what we're trying to do is this property, as far as the value goes, there's more value in 10 acres and putting this road in. We would get far more money for these properties at 10 acres. We just would. It's not all about money. Okay, because if it was all about money, that would be an option. We did lay out concepts with those. We met with the city. We went through multiple concept plans. It was unanimously approved. We wouldn't have went ahead with this had we not felt like we had all the support and unanimous approval and concept reviews. And then we went forward and spent a significant amount of money to put this plan together, which we thought really, we didn't have any negative support at those times. And we went through the whole process, all the concept reviews, nobody said a word. And now we're going forward with this, and I understand the concerns, I do. But I think overall, this property, this is the least impactful way to do what we want to do. And if it gets denied, yeah, maybe we come back in, we're gonna go back in and try to do the 10 acres at 14 lots and impact the wetlands, which we certainly can do. And that's really what somebody, or maybe sell the property, somebody else wants to do it. But the reality is, this is an opportunity to preserve what I think is the jewel in the city of St. Francis. This property is not just a bunch of wetlands. The area that we're giving up is the best property on this land, period, end of story.
All right, the conservation area in perpetuity means what? In your,
Well, you're never gonna have it developed. I mean, this is where you have all this wetland is condensed, or wildlife is condensed to this area predominantly, okay? Even if we put a couple houses in on the beginning portion, like the first property we ever sold wasn't 10 acres, it was under 10 acres, okay? And that was next to Phil's property, okay? That was 9.5 acres. The PID that comes into the property, that's 8 acres right now, we could sell that. We would be cutting off some access, but there's option, that has its own property identification.
right, but the conservation area can be used for what? If not, it can't be used for anything development area.
Yeah, it's gonna keep, first of all, we haven't even signed the lease for the Snowmobile Trail, okay? We haven't, we don't have to, I mean, we want to keep this thing going, okay? But the reality is, okay, it's not something we have to do. We've been doing it. We don't get compensated any money for this trail to go through this property, nothing. Okay? And the reality of it is that easement is gonna keep that beautiful ridge, the island across the ridge, all this. I mean, some of you guys know where our deer stands are. I don't know because we've not authorized anybody to be on the property. But this land that we're talking about is amazing property. And if you've been on the Snowmobile Trail, it is the best, the by far best, most valuable piece of property is what we're giving up in perpetuity. And you're not gonna be able to develop it. You can't put a house on it. You can't do anything to the land other than hunt on it. And that's probably what me and Terry will do, is just keep the property and use it as hunting land. That's what we've been doing. We've been hunting on it. And we slowly have developed some property and built some homes, and everybody's just been thrilled with everything we've done so far. I mean, I don't know one person that's moved in this area that isn't happy about it and what we've done. We could have not developed that 37 acres across the road, but we did.
So let me ask you this, as far as the wetlands, if there were 1 to 10, one house per 10 acres, what's the effect of the wetlands on that versus what you're doing to affect the wetlands?
Well, if you have a lake property, for example, that's water, it's a wetland, right? So you have maximum 25% pervious surface, and that's driveway, house, any hard surface, right, that where water's gonna run off, because they don't want it going in the lake, right? So by putting in another, doubling the size of the road, you're doubling the amount of water going into the wetland, and doubling the surface, the road surface that's gonna go into that wetland. Okay, so now you got that factor into it. By clustering this, you're not impacting the wetland. We did a tree survey, right? We'd have to cut tons of trees down, put more road in, just tons. There'd be way less impact. I mean, we're talking maybe an acre of trees. We cut this road and we're talking 10 acres, wetland fill, impervious surface, water runoff. It's not, and guess what? Things are gonna change. Eventually, this is gonna get developed. We don't do this. This could be a high density development in 10, 15 years, and there's 40 homes in here. And you guys, in 2040, 20 years from now, something's gonna change. This isn't gonna ever be able to have more than 14 homes.
I grant you that, because if the music expands, that would happen, but I'm just asking you now, what is the difference between the way you have it laid out to protect the wetlands and the way these people want the 1 for 10? What's the difference? What's the pro and the con from what you're doing to the wetlands and what they want, what they're asking for to the wetlands?
Well, we don't have to build the wetlands. Okay, we have less impervious surface because we have to put the road through the wetland to fill it in, have all that water run off of the impervious surface going. It would have to be managed and ran through the wetlands and be closer. It's just more impactful. I mean, it's across the board. You just have far more, you have more, even as far as if they.
Because the road would extend longer, you're saying with the 1 for 10, the road would go longer, deeper? And
Well, yeah, double. So
Right, and
you take the width of a road and do it another half a mile.
And you have more runoff.
Yeah.
So this way you cut it off where you cut it off.
Then you have to fill in the wetland, fill it all in, you have to fill it in, you have to, all that wetland running off. And this property, this 90 acres essentially. And then if it does stay acres of cultural 10 acres, now you got massive pole barns that can be built, all these different things. There's whole different things. So it's not like you can't, if these were 10 acres, you still can put quite a bit of building structure on there. Okay. In fact, probably the same square footage as we can build right now on one of these houses. I don't know the exact calculation, but it's probably not
All
far.
right, Josh, okay, I understand all that. Okay, I get runoffs. Okay, I get all that. But what I'm trying to figure out is if just so we can understand it, 10 acre lots, one house per 10 acre on 14 means you have to extend the road down or impervious and will run up to the wetland. That would affect the runoff. You're saying, in your opinion, that would impact the wetland more than what you have in your cluster development right there, right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you'd have to basically.
Is that
run the
correct?
road.
Sal?
Yeah, you'd have to run your road, instead of stopping here, you'd come here, you'd come around, you'd come all the way here, and you'd have like a cul-de-sac in here, and you'd have to pile your lots off. And so you have to cut all these trees out and fill all this in. And you wouldn't have the Snowmobile Trail.
Now, and then just so I understand this too, at council, so if these lots are approved and sold out, what does that affect the wetlands? These still are intact, then, correct?
Correct, the wetlands would be intact with the plan that's been proposed.
Right, the wetland would be intact.
Yeah, we're not filling any wetlands. We don't have a permit.
But
We're not impacting the
a
city.
one house per 10 acres would affect those wetlands.
Oh, absolutely, you'd have to come around, plus you can put larger pole barns in, so there's more impervious, all that, right? So as far as what you actually can build and prove on one of these lots, it's far less by doing this. Because you can't build as big a pole barn, you can't have as many open, you can't do all that, so there's the impact of pervious surface, tree, cut a tree, all that as well.
I really try to understand this just like that. Okay, so this is the conservation area. Right? And the wetlands are part of these lots right here.
These are the wetlands here. So pretty much all this is in these lots here.
Right. So when these lots are sold, that's the end of it. I think you can have those wetlands.
Yeah, and Eric can speak to that, he's got an additional easement.
So there's two different easements that.
Outlaw A and conservation, right?
Well, outlaw A and most of block 2 is dedicated, they will be public drainage instead of easement. Which means that in order to do anything within that area, you have to have the public's permission. So they're gonna be covered under.
Right, it's no different than a
Statutory,
on a city lot, right?
Yeah, it's a statutory drainage easement, but there will also be an additional conservation easement, which is something that the city, you know, it's an agreement between the city and whoever. We're kind of double covering it. All
right, so what I'm saying to you is, the conservation area into perpetuity was the wetlands. These lots, when these lots are sold, those wetlands basically are just wetlands forever.
Yes, yes.
No one's gonna put any pole barns on them, anything like that.
You can't build pole barns. You have to get a city building permit, and the building inspector will not allow you to put a.
But on the other way, if we go 1 per 10, that brings that road all the way down, and that affects the wetland as it becomes over. Or change your credit, whatever you want.
Oh, yeah. You don't know wetlands.
Council, do you understand that too then?
Yes, sir.
One comment about filling in the wetlands, are you asked them if they would be able to be filled in the outlaw area? No, they're not, because if they're gonna be put into that easement. So the 4 lots that are next to it, the homeowners could do the same thing, they could go and fill them in just like these guys.
They can't.
No,
That's not, they cannot do that.
It's not part of the conservation, but it's more of, I think, the laws.
A builder can go in and fill in a wetland?
No.
Say that again.
All kinds of.
Those, even the wetland that's outside of the conservation easement will be covered by a drainage and utility easement. So you still not be able to touch that as part of.
That's what I'm trying to get across here. You cannot change it. It's like a drainage
Yes, you
easement on a
can.
city lot.
Yes, you can, you can get a survey change by getting a Loma permit from the county, and they will change your wetlands.
Dave?
What were you gonna say?
Mayor and council, the Loma is for the floodplains.
There.
Once we have the easements with this plat finalized, they do not change, and any wetlands would be protected. Once it's developed into individual parcels, the wetlands are protected under our wetland city code. So if they were to want to expand, move, we work with the conservation district, we work with the Hopkins and Anderson. It's just not easy. You can't just build it.
That's correct, Dave? Okay, I tell you what.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So what we're talking about here is what can they do to that lot if there's already this large drainage easement on there? Because what I'm feeling is we're getting some scare tactics of, we're gonna put 14 on there, we're gonna fill all that in with dirt, we're gonna spend millions of dollars. Either way, we're gonna get 14 lots on that piece of property,
Or they'll sell to somebody that might want to do.
or might wanna do that.
That blue corner area though is what the developer.
That's what they're offering now, but
Right.
if we don't go with this style, all bets are off, is the way I'm feeling.
Right.
So then they can come in, either there's easements now on that piece of property or there's not.
Mayor Council, there are not currently easements on the property today. That's something that they are proposing as part of this project.
And these easements are there to protect.
Protect the what?
Yeah, I'm just trying
Trying to
to,
comprehend this myself.
I'm trying to comprehend.
Yeah, I mean, respectfully, yeah, we certainly, we're trying to impact, have the least impact possible. And that's kind of what we came up with. I mean, like I said, we've been in here, not, having concept reviews, and we looked at different, how many concepts there did you present here before we came up with this? I mean, we had at least 8 or 9.
But we've looked at a lot of different options. There's wise land division, wise development, and there's unwise development. And in my opinion, this is wise development. This is effectively using the land and resources, taking account of the wetlands, the hill, and nature. This is what we're proposing is wise development.
I mean, I like the conservation area in perpetuity. I like that a lot. And I like the protection of wetlands. If this plan would do that more than 1 per 10 acres, I like that a lot. My concern though, I would have to say it's county road, concerns me, but that we've had other issues with county over the years. That's out of our hands, you know what I mean? So ambassador's gonna be whatever the county says it's gonna be. Am I right?
And other counties, I know this is, Isani County is irrelevant, but their concept on agricultural property would be 4 for 40. And the maximum size is 3 acres, and then the remnant lot has to be what's left over. It's more of a cluster style, and that's what they do. It preserves farmland. And that's why they do it. And that's kind of what essentially this is doing, preserving more area of land to density development.
And just to be fair, full disclosure is the proposed development would save you some money on development because you wouldn't have to fill in the wetlands, less headache, so on and so forth. Filling it in would cost a little bit more money. I have no idea how much. I'm not gonna present it.
Well, I
We
mean,
require more paperwork, I assume too.
I believe that the value would be, the land that's being given up in the area is most valuable portion.
Right.
Bar none, it's the highest, it's probably the highest, I would venture to say it's one of the highest pieces of ground in St. Francis. I don't know, I mean, we could look it up.
But your idea is by the layout you've done here is to protect the wetlands and limit the amount of impervious runoff is what you've done. But that is your idea here, right?
And protect basically one of the nicest, most beautiful pieces of.
Right, but that conservation area is only really usable by you gentlemen, not public.
Right now.
Correct.
Well, partly because there is so much more value in doing 10 acres. There just is. I mean, you would get so much more value out of this property if you were to do a 10-acre, driven 10-acre sections. It just would be, I mean, you're not gonna get, and so, plus this is just going through many layers of concept reviews. This is what we feel like this is the best option for us.
All right, and staff, I know you agree with that completely, that this is the best plan to getting the lots there with less effect on the wetlands and the conservation. I mean, but the public is right there. I mean, the conservation area is only going to be utilized by you gentlemen, not the public. I mean, that's fact. I just want to get that on record.
Or whoever the eventual.
That's not fair for taxes, though.
And the Snowmobile Trail.
Right, that you're.
The Snowmobile Trail will be gone out of there once they develop. It will not.
Well, that's not what the Snowmobile Club is saying, and they signed on to it.
I know.
And maybe if they do the 10 acres, what he was saying before too, that's their plan, that's something that me, it's got, I'm trying to focus on what we can do up here rather than, like I say, my issue is 14 clustered to 14 spread out with wetlands filled in, which they could do possibly, right? I have no idea if there's any laws that would stop them. I'm not gonna pretend to know every federal law. They may have more to do, but if they choose to do that, that would be on them. And then how does everybody feel about that?
Well, if they fill in wetlands, they should tell us where they're gonna replenish their wetlands.
Well, and if it comes to that, I'm sure they'll have to figure that out. That's what I'm saying, is I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out, this is their land, they wanna develop it, they wanna put 14 there. Now, they may or may not put 14 there, they may sell it and leave it to somebody else. I have no idea what's gonna happen. That's why I'm trying to differentiate between the 14 cluster and the 14 spread out. How is that gonna differentiate? I mean, other than Phil having the 4 people right there, he would have maybe 1 or 2.
And then he'd be more up, and then down lower would be more lots because
Well, it'd be maybe 1 depending on the spread out. I don't know what the acreage plan would look like. They'd have to develop that all over again and go through that, which I'm just wondering, what is the difference between that and how do, obviously you guys don't want it the way it is. We know that. And that's, you're right to feel that way. I just don't understand with the complaints that we've heard, the turn lane would still probably be there, the light pollution, the amount of houses, if they did decide to develop it. Now, they may or may not, who knows? And that's, a lot of these are unknowns and out of our control necessarily, because they, other than saying this is okay, or the other one they could do regardless of whether we say it's okay or not. They wouldn't even need that. So where's the difference is what I'm having a hard time.
Well, can I ask you this, on this concept exhibits that I'm looking at, A, B, whatever you have here, I mean, A, plan B, plan C, plan D, which one shows the 10-acre lots?
So Council Mayor is referring to a document I shared that we had originally started with. That's what you're referring to, what I emailed you. I don't have my email or my
Right, but I'm looking
documents,
at A shows 16 lots. Are those 10-acre lots? Or is
That was.
That would be 10-acre lots based on.
All right, and if that's right, if I'm right, what I'm trying to gather is if that was right, there would be no conservation area and no wetlands. It would all be developed in the 16 homes, 16 10-acre lots, right?
Yeah.
Your way, there's a conservation area and protection of the wetlands
Two less houses.
and 2 less houses.
Yeah, think about it conceptually like Gene's property, 200 acres, we're talking about it, a hypothetical. Let's say they put 20 homes in a cluster on that 200 acres, and the remaining land was all beautiful farmland. That would not, in my opinion, look terrible. But you put 20 homes clustered, all spread out with roads everywhere, running around through there, that's gonna look a lot different. It's gonna be nice. But as far as the impact and the amount of.
Josh, come and look at this, please. And just tell me if I'm right on this, okay? Is this a concept that was thought of, the 16, is that 10-acre lots? Close. Close, I mean, some are gonna be a little small, whatever. But that means no conservation area and no wetlands, right? That would all be built. Look, we can put footings in the ocean. I know anything can be built. You want to spend that money on, I understand that. I'm not ridiculously stupid on that. But I'm saying to you, so this plan would get rid of the conservation and the wetlands. Your plan and have a more impervious runoff along the road, okay? This way, we've cut the road size down, you reduce it to 1,500, 1,900. It's not double that, or whatever, or 2,400, whatever it may be. And you're protecting the wetlands and you're protecting the conservation.
Is the Snowmobile Trail,
And there's no doubt.
Is there any way that we can pull this up so they can?
Can we do that?
The email maybe to Thursday or something.
I think we get this blow, is there any way to get that on the screen? Can we get that on the screen?
I don't have it with me, no.
I don't know. if Thursday work was.
No, I didn't bring my laptop there, so I don't have that. And that was the concept that was designed when we were sitting down in the early days, really trying to figure out what would work.
Well, that's what I'm trying to point out here, is that you thought about doing 10-acre lots.
Yeah.
But doing that would make more impervious runoff and then affect the wetlands and no conservation area. Your way, you get the 14 lots, but you protect certain areas, and that's less road, less impervious. So actually, I see your concerns, public, I really do. I can see what's going on here, and this, by the way, has been a problem that this council has seen the last 5 years between growth, because growth, every coin has two sides to it. Every problem has two sides, positive and negative. I mean, there's positive to nuclear energy and there's a negative to nuclear energy. We all know there's a positive and negative. But my point is that the city is growing. It really is. And I mean, what was rural is becoming urban, and there's a mix now, and this is the problems that we face in the council, which way to go to service you the best way we can and service them the best way we can, and not say no to development and yet be positive. So it's like, we're in a hot seat here in the sense that we want to be right by you, but we're going to be right by them. So how to develop in a responsible way that makes sense. I happen to be a builder by trade, and to me, when I see less impervious, I see protection of wetlands. That's something important to me, okay? And from what I see here on this concept of 16 homes on 10-acre lots, you lose the wetlands and you lose the conservation area, and you have more impervious runoff, which is more damaging in the long run. The county, I don't agree with county all the time. I know council has our issues with that, okay? But that road on Ambassador is county. Unfortunately, it is, because I don't like the unevenness or the height differences. I don't like that at all. And maybe somewhere down the road, it's going to turn into a 2-lane or a 4-lane rather. And I can tell you, after I've seen developments over the years where I've lived in the past out in the western Minnesota, I mean, where I've seen, single lanes each way on Highway 7, for instance. I lived out there back in the 70s. And still all the farmland has been built up into homes now, and it's still 1 lane each way. Infrastructure is the last thing they deal with. They bring all these people in, and then they deal with that. It should be, I've always said over the years, and the council certainly say this, is that infrastructure and development should be at the same pace, so that when you bring in more people, the infrastructure can handle the load of more people. But they don't do that, because everything comes down to dollars, and that's the only thing that ever talks. So to me, when I'm looking at this plan here, and I wish you could see it right here, it's 16 homes, mostly close to 10-acre lots, which gets rid of the conservation area and the wetlands. This is a little more responsible, in my opinion.
Well, just a question for staff too. If they did this, I don't know if you kind of recall what Steve's looking at here. If we can't share it.
Do you recall this at all?
I mean, if they did this, would they even have to be here talking to us? Or they have other obstacles, obviously, with wetlands, but that wouldn't necessarily be with us.
Mayor and council, they would be with you for preliminary plat, but not for rebuilding.
Okay. So I guess my question to the public then is too, is if they so choose to move this route and you end up with 16 homes or 14 or whatever, and they're 10-acre lots in that area, the road would stretch longer, you'd lose the wetland. Is everybody okay with that?
100%.
What's that?
1 per 10 along a road, no wetlands, no conservation area, just.
No, because part of the PUD requires there to be a public benefit.
Mayor,
Well, that's the
council,
PUD, but I'm saying with
Yes,
this
yes,
concept,
Correct.
with
that
this,
concept.
and of course,
I haven't seen
I wish
that.
we could get it up here.
Come and see it. Come and see it.
But if they didn't have to ask permission, they can still put 16 homes on that.
Right.
Technically, they could fit 16 on
Well,
there.
no, they can't.
That's concept.
Well, they'd have to fill in stuff and do stuff.
Well, it's
But
not even 100.
okay, so I have no idea. 14, I guess. This
This
shows
is under
16.
10. Yes, this is part of it.
Right, but it gives you the idea that if they went 14, if they went 14 10-acre lots, you lose the wetlands and the conservation area.
So,
That's what you
they care about the conservation of wetlands to have 14 houses, but they don't care enough.
That's not my, so
No.
here's this, I get what you're saying, and you guys don't,
I just
she
was
wants,
curious.
right, and I get what you're saying, but that, to me, that's out of our hands anyway. If they so choose to do 14, whether they do it this way or spread it out, fill in the wetlands, go all this other route, which they may or may not, who knows, right? I'm not them, it's not my money,
Yeah, we're not.
whatever, but
this isn't
if they so choose to do that, is everybody okay with Well, that's, I'm asking, that's what I'm saying, though, I mean, because everybody's gonna be back here saying we still got 14 cars, we got the headlight pollution, we have. You're gonna have one, I mean, basically, if they did it like this, Phil would have the one person, so the 4 up in the upper, next to Phil's property, there, the 4 on the right side of the road would be one property, basically. And then one property down below it, and then they fill in the land everywhere else. I'm just trying to make sure that we have an understanding of what.
Kevin, have you seen this?
No, I have not.
Everybody's, I mean, it's, because a lot of the complaints don't really differentiate, other than you don't like the look of it in the neighborhood or whatever. I just don't understand the argument between it and how it's really gonna affect everybody else. Phil, I can understand with more houses there. You know, I'm trying to understand, because if we're all gonna be back here again doing the same thing over.
One thing we did talk to staff about, and we got a significant investment into this, getting to this point.
Right.
You know, very large, significant amount of money has been spent to get us here. And we went off of our concept review and the approvals and the unanimous approval, so we were kind of running off of those approvals. But to get to this point, but what we did, me and Terry discussed this, was along Phil's property and on the side of there, with the drainage ditch along the road, there's gonna be a significant amount of fill that could be allocated for some kind of berming along the backside of the lots over here are all protected by trees here.
Right.
But along this end and corner, when we fill out this drainage ditch, there's gonna be a significant amount of earth to be allocated somewhere. We could create a little berm along this corner in the backside of these lots.
Take the fill over there.
To take the fill over there, and that would take a lot of this concerns of what this is gonna look like and feel like away, because the lots on the west side are fine, and you're not really gonna, they're not the impact. It's more of the lots, again, on the east side a little bit. But certainly we could come up with some kind of landscaping design to utilize that dirt or to create a berm, possibly some trees above it, pine trees or something. That, and I think it would look, I mean, it would improve the development overall and give it some more feel. And that's something I talked about with staff after the last meeting, when there was some concerns. But I'm like, we were just trying to get this, get in front of you guys and talk to you again. We're like, we gotta stop the bleeding.
Okay, all right, listen, I appreciate that you're working with them. I appreciate the public's input on this and all that. Again, what Councilman Muehlbauer is trying to say is, whether it's one house per 10 acres or this cluster, there'll still be 14 homes, 14 cars, 14 lights, all that stuff. And the county will still be doing what the county does on that road. And that's a concern I have, but county is out of our jurisdiction. That's a problem, okay? So I understand that.
No, I do have a question though, if that's okay. If you're going to be talking about these drainage ditches or these berms to help these new people, well, let me.
Well, it's just aesthetically, like, if you had a berm along this side here, and there's probably, we could look at, see what options you have there. I mean, like I said, there's gonna be some dirt with this turn lane when it's built. About getting some different, when I built this house,
It's really
here,
off the frickin' road.
it's over, it's 150 feet off of the road. So this turn lane is not running parallel to the home. I mean, it's close. But it's
Anybody else on the list that wants to talk, Joe?
Your Honor. Just in the interest of getting everybody heard, I think there's about 6 more people outside.
And I've asked them if they want to come forth. So I'm asking anyone else to come forth if you wish.
We'll burn through the list. We got their names right here, but then also part of this approval requires 4 votes. Councilmember Ludwig is feeling
Right,
under the weather.
that's what was my next
Yeah. So another potential is to have some
potential solutions drafted up, and we could continue this to the next meeting.
So let me ask you, is there a time frame on this at all?
Deadline?
The deadline for this is February 8th.
Okay, February 8th, okay, so, all right, here's what we're gonna do, we're gonna go down this list and see if anybody else wants to talk, and then because Sarah Ludwig is not here, and we need 4 out of 5 to pass this, and I think it's more important that all council members be here at that time, we're gonna delay this till the next meeting, to discuss it, they'll still be before February, but we're gonna give you every opportunity we can, okay? We're discussing the best we can, but understand something here in the council, and I wanna make this perfectly clear so you understand where we're coming from. We look at the broader picture of the city, not one neighborhood, not one area over. We look at the broader picture and how it all fits together. It's a giant puzzle going out 20, 30, 40 years. That's what we're looking at. So we're gonna try to work with you the best we can and listen to everything you have to say. But at the end of the day, we have to make a decision based on what we think is the best direction for the city at large, okay? These are tough seats to fill here. We're not just gonna slam the gavel down and say, and walk away, which was done to us back in 2016 and 17, when they passed that wastewater facility and didn't listen to anybody. This room was filled up by 100 people 2 times and listened to nobody. We're not gonna do that. We'll listen to you the best we can and try to work out the best we can. We really will, okay? So now, you have the list here and go down the name of anyone else that wants to speak.
Kevin Danker.
Name and address, please.
6032 Ambassador. I guess my biggest grief is the front cluster doesn't match with any of the look that's on Ambassador. And then obviously I'm calling it, I can't even see what that is, but the biggest lot on the south side there, next to the city portion, obviously designed, by the, let's call them, Green Valley. I'm assuming one of those 2 owners is going to have that lot and hunt and use and avoid paying taxes on that 60-acre outlot that he gave the city. He is the only one that has access to it. And it's designed by the wetlands to have no access other than 30-foot easement. But the city's not gonna allow anybody back there, probably for legal reasons, liability reasons. So I own the 150 next door. It would be convenient for me not to have to pay taxes on that and just come up with a great plan like this to avoid paying taxes.
All right, so
Am I right?
what is your rebut on that? Any rebut on that?
We will definitely be paying taxes on that property. We were
On the
not
60
gonna-
acres that you're giving the city, you're gonna pay taxes on that?
Mr. Mayor,
Is this an easement? There will
Mr.
be
Mayor?
taxes
Yes.
paid.
Dave?
It's an easement, it is not conveying the fee title,
Taxes will be based on value.
So they have to pay taxes.
so they have to pay taxes.
Not on the 60 that they're giving the city.
We're not.
They're not giving
They're not
the
giving it
city
to
a
the city.
fee, they're giving an easement. The conservation easement, it is not transferring the ownership of the land to the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's not a tax shelter.
Do they pay a reduced tax on that?
Do they pay reduced taxes or is it by value?
It'd be by value.
So my point is,
The value will be less because it's all wetland.
well, and yes, true. I was confused. But I'm assuming,
Well, I'm just trying to clarify things.
no, and I didn't know,
I'm not saying,
I just wanted to bring a value point.
well, that's why we're trying to clarify.
I see it shaded in blue, I'm assuming that's the portion that they're donating to the city.
They're not donating. It's a drain, it's an easement. Conservation
I
easement.
can confuse it too, though. Easement and city.
All right, hey, what's the next name?
Kelsey and Jordan Demore. Demore?
No.
we're good.
Is it good? Okay.
Don Slaughter.
No, we're good.
Don Slaughter, Sean Roder. Dan Schwab.
Yeah.
All right, name and address, please.
24664 Macri Street, St. Francis. I believe that their intent is to fill in the wetlands and build, get these first clusters to pay off their debt on the property, because that's how it usually works. You gotta get the first 4 or 5 homes in at the front of the block so it can continue building.
Can we get, well, and your rebut to that is, sir?
We don't owe any money on the property.
And then the road, the width of the road isn't big enough. It needs to be larger, because you're gonna have construction vehicles entering and exiting all the time, and the 24-foot road is not wide enough.
Somebody say something there on your end, please. Do you have a rebut to that?
24 feet is wide enough to.
No, it's not.
Well, actually, we
It's not.
we addressed that in the planning commission meeting, and it was brought up to, both, the fire, I think it was the fire chief was here.
Right there.
I think it was addressed that I don't know if it was a fire chief, but it was somebody within, fire services. Yes, services.
What'd they say?
And they said it was okay. I mean, maybe staff could weigh in on that.
Okay.
Mayor and Council, these plans have been reviewed by our engineering team and our development committee. If engineering had concerns about the width of the road, they would not have let it gotten this far.
Craig?
This road design is in the city standard plates. This is a.
And how does it play out during the construction?
This is a standard rural road. Every road that's rural around here is 24 feet wide. Even the county roads, 24 feet of surface, and then there's shoulders that aren't paved. But this road is our standard rural design.
And the shoulders are class 5 recycled base. The gravel,
No, I think it's maybe a foot of gravel and then topsoil shoulders, which are probably 4 feet on each side.
but gravel.
Right, but this is not a substandard road.
All right, so
I just
how
want
does
to be
it,
clear about.
how, is that width fine for construction purposes?
Yeah, every city around here that has rural standards uses a 24-foot top, just like this one is.
I can disprove that, Albertville's got smaller roads.
Well, then we're.
Yeah,
shape
you might have
it up.
smaller, but
Okay. Okay, all right.
I'm just saying this is in our standard plates right now. It's a
All right.
standard.
All rural roads are 24. When it comes to urban, it's a bigger roads, 32.
Correct. When we changed the code, we didn't allow rural roads anymore. That's why they're here asking for a variance for the rural road,
For length,
for width.
for width of 32.
I mean, just the design.
Right.
It's not curb and gutter.
Right, so it doesn't have to be 32, it's gonna be down to 24.
Correct. The overall width with the shoulders is as wide as our urban design,
But not the paved part,
but not the paved part.
okay? Next.
Nancy Thompson.
Oh, no, no, I just put her name on my list.
Okay, and then just for the record, a lot of the names that were on here, this was submitted after the meeting started, there's against development. I think that's everybody that signed up.
Okay, all right. Council, do you have any comments, Rob, at all?
Well, I'm concerned with the easement, and I kind of understand the residents' view on this is we're going to develop up close, and then the property owner of the final lot is going to take full advantage of the easement in all of that bottom portion in blue with no part of the city being able to use that. We can't go on there and hunt, we can't do anything because it belongs to the property owner, but it's an easement for the city. I agree with the gentleman over here. That's where I have a problem with the whole development of it. I do see them being able to fill it in and put 10-acre lots on all of it. So I'm kind of in a toss up on how we develop this to best fit the city's needs and a developer and our residents. I think what the resident across the street was saying was maybe you could spend a few dollars and put a row of trees in front of her property at the edge of her driveway to limit the amount of light that's going to be coming in all the way down that road. Those are the types of things that I have a problem with, is we do look at a development and we try to protect the people that are going to move in, but we don't look at the residents that are already there and they're being affected. I like your idea of a berm on the east side to protect that resident. I think the resident on the north is put some big trees along her driveway with her permission to guarantee some noise filtering, some light filtering. Those are types of things that I think developers should do for the community that you're going to try to develop in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're open to that. I mean, with the conditional approval on, doing something like that, we would certainly, if we had an approval instead of condition on this, we've been working with staff here on this, and, for about 8 months now, I believe, and 9 months, and going through a lot of different scenarios. If we just want to say, hey, are we putting good dollars at a good situation, or are we putting bad dollar? It was just kind of frivolous here, and we've been going at this for a while, and we're open to things. I mean, we genuinely like everybody here, and I feel like we're part of the community. I've been hunting this property and out there going for almost 10 years.
I want your opinion on, did you label it easement so that you can gain 60 acres of hunting land that no one else can use? I think there's a lot of St. Francis residents.
Let's look at the reality. On the easement, we didn't come up with the design or the wording or how it was going to be processed. It was all done through people, how much responsibility goes on the city based on what it's used for, and what's the easiest and most cost effective. A lot of people here, that think that we came up with all these ideas and are trying to push things. We came up with almost no ideas. We put forth all these different plans, different suggestions, and over the months, this is what we have here, is what we've come up with.
Yeah, as far as an easement goes, we were approached at one time to put a conservation easement on this property. We would have been able to retain the property, but give up development, and we would have been paid for that easement, paid money. We can show that. We have an offer purchase agreement to put an easement on here, so we're not getting paid, we're actually giving up use of the property. We're not gonna build on it, we're not gonna build a log of the property, there's timber value here, there's all kinds of other things that are being given up. And it's, like I said, the nicest part of this property, the most valuable, the most beautiful. If you guys want to go out there and take a look at it, I would, you go drive around this land and take a snowmobile and you will agree.
All right, listen, okay, and I appreciate that.
And that's what I want. I don't know any of the processes.
Sure.
I read the packets, I try to understand as a resident's point of view. And it's good to hear you say those things. And there's some things that we can work on to make all the residents a little more happy about a development going in and preserving our wetlands and all these things. I appreciate that. I'm kind of.
Yeah, there's plenty of earth to help with some berming and even across the road. I promise you, we did have a discussion with staff about these berms, about addressing, because we heard
Didn't address any of my concerns, period. I got ignored by you.
Okay, all right, listen.
I talked to Beth about the berm, and that has been on the table.
We have to.
For over a month.
All right, listen, everybody. We've given us 2.5 hours, okay? So what we have to do right now is move on, because we have other things on the council's agenda, okay? So here's the deal, here's what we're gonna do, okay? If this is agreeable to council. Address the berm issue with this lady, okay? I forgot your name, but just address that issue there. Address that other issue of that berm you're talking about, the extra, the dirt that you're gonna be moving, excavation. Address these issues and come back to us on the 18th, I believe it is.
Correct.
Okay, and then let's see what you can work out on that and see if we can get this to work out between the parties, okay? And like, once again, we have to look at the bigger picture of the city. We're not just slam dunking. I'm not taking this gavel down and say, screw you. We're not doing it, okay? That was done to us back in 16 up at wastewater facility, and we promised we would never do that ever again, okay? Allow that, and we will not. So right now, we're just trying to work this out to be more, the best for the city, best for you, and best for everybody concerned. So if you can, and from what I gather from staff, you've been a very workable developing company.
We have a surveyor here.
Right, so let's have them talk. You will talk to her about the berms, you will decide, you know, talk about the other areas of berm and all that, see if we can work this out, come back to us on the 18th, and we'll see where we're at, okay?
I would make a motion to continue it.
Exactly. Make a motion to continue to the next meeting, please.
All right, I always like when you do that instead of, do I have a motion?
I gave you.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, have a first and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for your input, that's what government's all about, here to listen to you, and hopefully work out a situation.
I would just add too, if anybody wants to email me their phone number, whatever, I can give you a call, talk to you whenever about anything. All of our emails are on there. We do have lives outside of the council. But when we can get back to you, I believe everybody does try to get back to people that email them. Emails are on the website. I hope you understand where we're coming from. I believe I understand where a lot of people are coming from. You know, I might see things differently. There may be some perspective, but that's why we talk about things. So I look forward to hopefully hearing from somebody.
Well, we talked and we listened, so thank you so much for your participation. All right, item 9B, platinum land concept.
I think we probably should wait a minute until we
All right.
can see her.
Okay.
COVID issue, one of the kids.
All right, it's time to move on now. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For you tonight is a request for concept plan review for the site between Highway 47 and the Rum River, just north of Ambassador. The concept includes residential, commercial, and open space uses.
The former Swiss landing.
Correct, this is the former Swiss Landing, so that concept came before you in, I believe, 2019. So that has been updated, so this is a new concept. So this includes 112 acres east of Highway 47, again, between Ambassador and 241st. The site today is undeveloped, it's the farmland and woodland and wetland. The site does have some natural features that constrain the development potential of the area. There is steep topography along the river, both on the north side and then as it moves southwest through the property. There are several wetlands on the site, and then the eastern third below this ridge here is within the floodplain. So the concept itself proposes 295 residential units of varying use types. There is 1 2.5 acre commercial parcel that's proposed down on the southern end of the site. And there are 2 unbuildable outlots that are located across the river. Those are just part of the existing properties today. They are both within the floodplain as well. The site is guided commercial along Highway 47. It's also guided higher density residential as you move to the east. So overall, for the residential portion of the site, the comp plan requires that there's a density here between 7 to 60 units per net acre. The concept plan that's proposed is showing 5 units per net acre. So a slight decrease there. There would need to be a comprehensive plan amendment if something like this concept were to come through. And that would be both to handle the commercial, the fact that this commercial strip along 47 is proposed to be reduced to that 2.5 acre lot, which is a reduction of about 20 to 25 acres of commercial land. The other piece of that potential comp plan amendment would be to lower the density. So you'd be looking at like a medium density residential area. The use mix itself, again, there's that commercial site on the south portion of the land. But the residential use mix is spread between different types of uses. So there is single unit detached homes that are proposed along the river, attached townhomes that are kind of in the central area of the site, and then a 105 unit apartment, which is located along Highway 47 in the concept. So that follows the kind of pattern of higher density for the highway, and then taper to the lower density toward the river. Today, the site is zoned B2 general business and R3 high density residential. Again, the B2 is along 47, the residential is further to the east. The applicant would be looking to rezone the entire site to a planned unit development that allows a mix of uses. So you'd be getting flexibility with lot area and with setbacks as part of that PUD. The site is located within the urban Rum River Management District, which means that there are more stringent requirements for development in this district to ensure that the quality of the Rum River is maintained. These standards include vegetative standards, lot size, and setback standards. They also require any PUDs to be approved by the DNR, and they require conditional use permits for any public roads that are within that site. We did have the DNR take a preliminary look at this, and they provided us some high-level comments. Mainly what they're looking for is for any development on the site to preserve the steep slopes in the area, as well as the existing vegetation along the river. The concept shows a 25-acre or so site of park and open space along the easternmost third of the property. This site, anything to the east of this blue line is within the floodplain. So the majority of that open space is within the floodplain today. As we were doing our review, the DNR did mention that there is a conservation easement over the easternmost parcel. So that's the one outlined in red here. And that conservation easement is fairly strict. It prohibits public access. It also prohibits any development without the DNR's approval. So this entire area is included in the comprehensive plan, the Parks chapter, as part of Park Search Area number 2. So that's this area, the entire site, and then the area to the north, to the northern city property boundary. That Park Search Area is looking for a park somewhere in that area that contains neighborhood facilities and possible tie-ins with the river. As you can see, there are trails that were shown within the comp plan as moving through this entire site in some fashion or another, and then to allow that public access to the river. So planning or city council tonight, direction or discussion on this item and what exactly the open space could look like in this site would be very helpful to both staff and the applicant moving forward.
Great, thank you, Deb.
Can I continue?
Oh, I thought you were going. Maybe I was hoping. Maybe I was hoping, I'm not sure. Sorry.
Okay. So there are sidewalks that are required along one side of every public street in the city, and that would also be required in this development. One of the items that staff noted through our review is that a trail segment could be completed on that very southern end along Ambassador to help with the street for the trail connectivity in the area. And then again, discussion about the open space and the trails in this area. Where would it be possible for it to go? Where would you like to see them? Are trails something that's important to see here in this on the site? The development is showing to connect into the city's street network from 2 points. On the north end, that's 241st. On the south end, it's on Ambassador. So the public street that you see in red there would be proposed to serve the apartment complex, the single family detached homes, and then the commercial site. And the blue streets would be private streets that would be serving the attached townhomes. So on 241st, the applicant did suggest a land swap, which you can see in the orange there. And the reason for that would be to obtain land from the northern neighbor in order to provide appropriate right-of-way for that 241st Highway 47 intersection. And at this time, the northern neighbor has told us that they are not interested in that land swap, which could affect the phasing of this.
Can I ask you something here on that area of 47, 241, on that east side with this neighbor of the 8 acres he owns? Is that tan section, is that what we would need?
This corner here along Highway 47 is what the developer, or the applicant tonight would be obtaining, and they would be giving up this corner.
But that small section of that gentleman's 8 acres is what they need to make that road in sync with the west side of 240, 47, 241.
Correct, yes, that matches.
That sliver of road, of the land.
MnDOT also reviewed this concept and provided some comments. They recommended that a traffic study be completed for the development. They would be looking for turn lanes at that 241st Highway 47 intersection. And then they also requested that the apartment building entrance be moved so that it's at least 500 feet away from that intersection. Right now, it's sitting at about 250, just for a frame for it.
So it'd be closer to that house, first house.
Correct, yeah, it would move further to the east. The access point on Ambassador is located closer than what would typically be desirable to Highway 47 in that intersection. However, there are some site constraints in that area with a steep slope and a wetland in this eastern corner that really prohibit that road from moving any further to the east. Staff would ask that they move it as far as possible, but understand that that's really not much further than what's shown today. Anoka County did provide some comments as well, since Ambassador is a county road. They would be looking at a right westbound turn lane being required. And they may also talk about limiting access here because of the closeness of that access point to Highway 47 and Ambassador. There is adequate parking that's proposed for the apartment building as well as for the single family homes. The guest parking that's required for townhomes was not something that was addressed with this concept, but is something that will need to be addressed in the future. It's something that Planning Commission also mentioned that they would really like to see that guest parking be provided. And the site is supposed to be served by city utilities. As you can see, the northernmost extent of the city utilities today are at that Ambassador and 47 intersection. So this will be bringing them up through the development. And that is something that the city services do have capacity for today. So Planning Commission reviewed this at their December meeting. They again discussed the need for guest parking for the townhomes. And they talked a little bit about the open space and what that could look like. They're supportive of a trail or something that gets the public to the river. And then they discussed the idea of a comprehensive plan and their land use. And we're generally comfortable with revising that guidance to reduce the commercial land and then decrease the residential density on the site. So tonight, we're not looking for any specific council action. We're looking for council to provide feedback on the concept to both staff and the applicant. I've included some discussion items on the screen. If you'd like some talking points, but certainly anything that's part of this concept is up for discussion tonight. That I'll hold.
No, I'll say that. All right. Well, I'll start this off by the couple of concerns that I have is this road that county's talking about up Ambassador and not on that southern portion. Okay, so right now they're looking at if that's questionable right now, because that entrance to it is so close to 47. I understand that is close. So would they just relocate it farther down on Ambassador going east, or what do you think they might do?
So their initial comments were looking at a right in, right out access at that point to limit the traffic at that area. That would be something that the applicant would work with the county on with further support.
Right, because there has been talk about a roundabout at that intersection, by county, right? I mean, in the past, Ambassador 47, the county does want a roundabout there. So that is a concern, I think that will have to be addressed. And then this ROW, the right of way, bothers me a lot, that a sliver of land is a holdup. But I understand that this person is not in agreement of doing the trade with the lot that was proposed to him. So we'll have to see what the city may be able to do on that in the future here, because that's important. And even though, as you mentioned in the packet, as I talked with Kate earlier, you know, there's a phase in. This is 295 units. It's going to be phased in no matter what. There's nobody going to build this out in 1 year. That's going to be impossible. It'll be phased in over, just like in River's Edge and all the other ones, Lone River Bluff and all that was all phased in. This would be phased in too. But that right of way is going to have to be addressed one way or the other. It will have to be addressed. So on that, and then as far as I know, they proposed apartments there, but if we didn't approve the apartments, I would imagine townhomes or something would go in that area. Something would be built there. Is that right or wrong?
Mayor and Council, I guess I don't need to speak for the applicant, but yes, the idea is to develop the entire site. So if an apartment doesn't go there, it's likely something else.
Something will go. Well, I'm happy about it finally getting to a point of being talked about. It's been quite a long number of years. You know, as I first approached the city, we were talking to Dwight, works on his property there. So the city get to this point, I'm really happy about that. But like I say, I definitely think that that 241 is going to be an issue that we're going to have to address one way or the other. Because I don't agree with that holdout there for disrupting progress in the city. So let's discuss that and then see what the county comes up with for that right in and out. Because once again, the way that road is designed on the south end is very close to a roundabout that comes in. So, you know, and we have to make, I'm sure the county will make them aware of it, right? Okay. And the trail, we all know how we feel about trails. Trails and parks, that's big stuff. So, and this development needs that. So, getting trail to river is important. So that's my take on it. Other than that, I think it's slab on grade villas. I think some of it is, and then the residential and whatever. I like all the mix of it. So that's good to me. That's my comments. Kevin, your comments on this?
I would weird in that front corner where the northern individual is not interested. Could they cut into their own property and curve that down a little bit or not? Just forget that guy.
Mayor and Council, likely not. When you're talking about a state highway, they want the intersections to line up.
Oh,
So, yeah, so this is where the existing 241st comes in off the west side, so they would want that to line up.
okay. Yeah, another one of my concerns when I was at the P and Z, on the south side, the commercial side, my thought was, could anything be there? Another quick trip, or this or that, some light, light pollution, et cetera, et cetera. Would you want something like that in a residential area or just food for thought? I mean, if it's commercially labeled, they can do whatever they want. You could have Las Vegas signs there, and you got a nice, you know, seniors living in some of those slab on grade areas to the south. That was one of my concerns. But as far as the density portion, Beth, did you say you had scaled it back to some to make it more applicable, or if they wanted more than what was there? So if this is their maximum, then we could ask for less.
So the Mayor and Council, the current comp plan allows anywhere between 7 and 60 units per net acre on this site. They're proposing less than that. They're proposing with this concept 5 units per net.
Okay.
So it would be a request for an amendment to scale back the density.
Okay.
To make it less dense.
Wait a minute, because they have 12, it's 124 acres, right?
112,
Okay, so. And then you're going.
but it's net density, so it takes out the wetlands and the.
58 acres.
Okay, so it's 112, and you said 5,
Well, 58 acres is the net, so use 58.
58? 58 times 5 is what you're saying?
And I was all for trails also on the southern portion of that, some as it were, that's going into the river. That's what I was hoping that we could put trails, that lot. Talked about coming in, length and space. And again, DNR, what do we know about them as far as we saw what happened on the east side of the river. What impact did they have on the west side of the river here?
Yep, so Mayor and Council, this is part of the urban Rum River Management District, so not the rural, where we did see on the
Okay.
other side of
The road is on the west side, this is on the east. Right, or no?
No.
No, it's further way around.
Other way around.
So this has less stringent requirements, but there are still requirements that need to be fulfilled. It would be something that we need to start the discussion with the DNR early, which is why we sent the concept to them to provide some high level permits so that they're aware that something like this is potential or something that someone's interested in. We would need to work with them, the applicants aware of that.
But they don't have the ability like they have on the other side, with that strictness.
There are fewer requirements, or they're less stringent.
Is this the applicant in the audience? Can I ask what you envisioned as far as designating those commercial areas? What was your thought process there?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Darren Lazan, I'm Foreign Professional Services, and I represent Platinum Land Developer of this parcel. So thanks for opening the door to have a little discussion. Appreciate it. I'll get to your question in 1 second. Sorry, I didn't draw a bigger crowd for you. I found you ask back.
We appreciate it.
But so this is concept stage or sketch plan stage, and really and it's sometimes hard to distinguish. We're asking for a pretty significant step back in density from 7 to 60 down to 5. So we just want to know how you feel about that. We've asked for a pretty significant reduction in commercial land from
It's about 25 down to
25 to 3 or
so.
2.5. Those are placeholders. I'm here to show you how we've approached this site very schematically and get your feedback. I don't know what that south parcel is today. It's right now a placeholder for commercial, a much reduced portion of commercial. I think we'll probably come back under the PUD for this just because of the townhome components. They're tougher to meet models and so forth. But we could restrict those land uses on the commercial corner if that was desirable. But we set out quite simply to say we don't want to do 5 times this number of units. How do we best develop this site? We looked at let's not kid ourselves, that's all lowland down there. The last plan we saw was all private park. We excluded that, kept that the same. We took the upland area, put single family up against the most protected areas. We transitioned to detached townhomes, 1 layer in, to start addressing the city's desire and zoning for a little more density. Then we switched to multifamily quads, that's 6s in there too. And then the apartments in the commercial on the highway district. So that's our broad brush approach to how we'd like to proceed. But that's why we're here, to get your feedback on what you'd like to see before we put an entire plan together. So certainly all the way back around. Yeah, that's a small commercial node in the corner. A roundabout was the first I've heard today. I think what we would probably do to reach out to Milton County, see if there are any concepts to make sure we're leaving them enough room and right away there for that, and just make any adjustments. That's why we're here today. The park, my first reaction on the project in Andover, up against Martin's Meadows open space, the city bought it as open space. They have wood chip trails through there, and we're doing development 400 acres around it. We extended all those wood chip trails through our open spaces and made it part of the project and ties into there. So we would certainly be open to a public component, natural trails down on that low area, access to the river. If the city doesn't want the burden of that component, we certainly would revert to the last plan that had as a private. One thing that puts us in a little bit better position is we'll have an HOA over most of this property, so now we'll have an entity that could maintain the project.
Can you repeat that last part for me on HOA? Because that was my next question.
So one thing that makes this a little more unique is that there will be a homeowners association over this project. So we have an entity that we could make the responsible party for that private park if that's the direction that it went. Like I said, right now, if I heard trails and river access was a desired component in this district, we're more than happy to work with the city on making that happen. If there's no desire there for maintenance issues, liability issues, or anything else, we'll circle back and make it a private park like it was in the last sketch plan. If I could just address quickly the traffic issues on the north side. We had one brief discussion with that neighbor to the north. Initially, he was open to a swap because it got him more land adjacent to his home and buildings there. And then after planning, I guess after the planning commission meeting, he approached our broker and said he no longer wants to land trade. We're not done talking to him, we'll keep working on it, but it is key, it is a key piece, it has to align, we need that right away, what I guess we would propose if we were unable to reach an agreement, would be to dedicate all of our right away, and then put a temporary cul-de-sac in there until such time as we can get the rest of the right of way.
Can I just have a question here for Dave, okay? What's the legal action the city could take on something like this? Because from what I'm understanding with eminent domain type of situation like that, where there's a gain for the good of the public, and of course, this development, on the plus side to a development like this, of course, is great users on city sewer, water, and property tax. So, you know, what concerns me is a sliver of land, a little piece of land to hold up a whole development on getting a road across from the other road, west and east. I mean, I'm just wondering about that.
So the property would be specifically or blocked because a road needs to go through?
That entrance of 241 on the east side has to match the entrance on the west side, 241. And this sliver of road here, this sliver of dirt, is a holdup. And they.
Well, you said he could temporarily if he couldn't get that right away also.
Right. But I'm asking here for down the road, they offered to trade a lot for them and give them a free lot, which you see right there, a land swap. But this gentleman now backed out of that. And so that little sliver up there on the north section up there towards 47, as you see, is what holds up that from being entrance in on the north side.
That's something that the city could take a look at, but I would say that the first thing that you can do is go back to that landowner. And
Well,
see
absolutely,
if you
but
can
I'm saying to you, in the long, if that, I guess what I'm saying to you is that a sliver of land, holding up a whole development that can benefit the city in rate user fees and septic and tax dollars for a sliver of land seems to be more of a personal thing and not a benefit to the whole project.
Just say it.
I would
Say
recommend leaving it to the private party.
Well, I would hope the private parties can work it out. That's my whole goal on anything, let them work it out. But I'm saying to you,
Draft it up. I think that's gonna be some complicated stuff, but we could certainly get you a legal memo on that. I think that would be
correct. There's a lot of things that are.
I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying to you,
Don't get too involved if you don't.
I don't want to get too involved here. I'm just saying negotiation is the best way to go, but I hate to see something, a cul-de-sac won't serve it the way it should be served. You understand that? I understand that. Okay, we all understand that. Unless the road goes there and matches the west side of 241, a cul-de-sac is ridiculous. That's one way in, one way out, coming off the south end of the development. That's ridiculous. People don't buy developments in the developments like that. You have to go all the way in, come all the way out. Location, accessibility, parking, make developments, make business. And what you're doing is cutting off a key, another entrance point, which over a sliver of land, which to me is an abuse on the ownership of that property. So yeah, negotiate if you can, but I'm telling you right now, in my opinion, we should look at, if we have to, look at it from a different perspective.
We certainly can do that. I'd say that, I think it was 2005, there were some additional restrictions put in place by the legislature. I would also say that generally, roads are something that a governmental entity can pursue.
Okay.
I'm
just giving you our thoughts, my thoughts.
Exactly what I'm
I will say my thought. I mean, like I say, it's important.
So well, thank you for that. And again, we'll, to Councilmember's point, if we can resolve on the private side, that's the easiest. We come here, tell you we worked it out, we'll keep working on it. If it gets to that, we can potentially reduce it as well. If you notice the little wedge shape that exists, we propose to dedicate that on our side. It's dedicated already on the opposite side. We could get by without that wedge, and someday the state would have to take that piece to do a big intersection.
Well, I have to say, these land swap to me was a pretty good deal. If it was me, I would have grabbed that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So what we'll do is when we come back again with the next sketch plan, maybe we'll just do an inset plan and an alternate layout, how that would look temporarily until such time. The only comment that I guess the planning commission, none I'm concerned about. We've looked at all of them. The only one that was worth mentioning was their concern that it was too busy, and of course, I'm not sure what that meant entirely, but again, I wanted to go back and re-stress, this could have 5 times the number of units on here, which would be busy. We're actually asking for a downward reduction in, density from what's allowed, so, the permission to be under minimum. So we have softened this one up quite a bit, and again, these are all placeholders, one apartment unit of roughly 100 and change units, one commercial use, a mix of 1, 2, 3 different residential types. And that's what we're.
And I just want to also mention that with the commercial you're talking about, I know Kevin's concerned all that, but depending on what goes in a commercial can actually benefit the residents there to be like walk traffic to it.
Oh, yeah.
They're not driving. I mean, I know that for a fact over like in Andover on Hanson Boulevard across the City Hall. When I built there years ago, there was nothing there, and now you have some strip mall area, which is pretty convenient to people who live there. So you can do it right, beneficial, and not be a detriment. So I mean.
First project.
There you
That
go.
commercial corner across. the
Yeah.
street.
Yeah, and I was out there 95 building, it wasn't there, and now it's here today. I'm kicking myself in the butt.
But yeah, that's, again, we were concerned coming in, reducing that commercial as much. Maybe you guys felt like you wanted the tax base, the highest and best use of commercial, but that's a lot of commercial to run all the way up that frontage, and you're quite a ways out of town by the time you can know that, so.
Yeah, but it
we
could,
felt
but it
it's
could
small
service
neighborhood
that,
commercial.
could service that development pretty
Yeah.
nicely.
Nice neighborhood commercial.
Yeah, that's not good. All right. Joe, any comments?
The only question I have is, so you said you wanted a reduction in the amount of units, what's pictured here right now? Is
So-
that 7?
So this is 5 units per acre total, even with
What we're
the
looking at
apartment.
right now?
Right.
5 per
The
acre
2 zoning classifications you had in there were 7
to 60.
to 60.
Right.
So we're asking for.
I was wondering if what we're looking at is what we're talking about,
Yep.
100%.
Yeah, 5 units per acre, and that's a developable acre, that's why we brought it back to that 58 acre for the mayor's calculations, because that's just the upland area.
If you did have a cul-de-sac, you put a jump on one end, you could at least have an owl. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
How Todd feels about that.
Whatever, it's fine.
I guess my question would be, it's state highway, so some portion of that little V on both sides of 241st to line up could be assumed that the state could take that over versus the land swap, but
Yeah.
go private party.
Yep.
I don't see it as a showstopper. Putting a cul-de-sac in there, looking at the concept, I thought we can only have so many homes per cul-de-sac. This is a beautiful layout. If you had 2 cul-de-sacs on the end and no way out, that's way too many homes per one cul-de-sac. Because that's basically what that picture would be if we can't get that second entrance. And that I wouldn't buy in there if it was right in, right out with only one access. It to me, it would be a showstopper. I'm concerned about the DNR part. Beth, did you mention something about you can't have any public access in there? So how can we make this grandiose looking trail if we don't have, if we can't be on there?
And so, Mayor and Council, that's a good thing to discuss tonight. This red block here, that's where that easement is located. So you're right, if that can't be public access, if there's not a lot you can do on that area, doesn't mean they couldn't use this part to the south and go up here. There are options, but that is something that we really want your feedback on tonight as far as, typically when we talk about public parks and park dedication, we don't accept land that's undeveloped. This land is all open foot. That said, if trails are something that, are really important in this area, then maybe we want to revisit that discussion, but we're really trying to get the feel from you tonight. What do you think makes the most sense here? Is it private because there's already that easement, because this area is floodplain? Or would you like to see some sort of public effort as part of this development?
What I would like is, instead of that cul-de-sac, and I'm just,
Where's the liability line too?
devil's advocate, looking at the old picture and we had a park or something, right? In
It
that
was something
area.
similar to this, though.
On the outside road, we kept it pretty much exactly the same.
And then they just said it was private.
Right, and then just blocking that off to maybe like 6 or 12 parking spots to access the trail. And I would love to see a little dog park in there or a Frisbee course through that whole piece. I don't know what kind of permission we'd have to get from the DNR to, you know, the first part over there by the blue is, you know, the Frisbee golf and the first 8 holes, and then the last 8 holes, if we get the DNR approval, per se, something like that, as far as like a Frisbee golf course. I seen one over in Coon Rapids, which is really cool, where it kind of goes through that area. I like parks to be able to not be 100% accessible only to the residents that live there. I want them to be somewhere where we can park. Other residents can come in there without cluttering up these 3 or 4 residents cul-de-sac, trying to get to some sort of park trail.
How's that open to the entire stuff?
Well, how does that work with an HOA and private?
Yeah, those are 2 different things. So in our mind, it would either be similar to what you see here, little to no parking because it's a private park and the HOA manages and owns it. And it's just as previously proposed to be a private park. Or it's a public park and we create some parking and we do a partnership with the city and figure out what you want down there and work through it. Yeah, we can't really commingle those. The HOA can't own it if it's open.
How does that easement affect liability or like that is my question, I guess.
That one I do not have an easement over. That's its own parcel. So if you took that as part, you can take the land itself. It would be easement.
But the red part restricts.
So, and even the red part you can own, you just can't use it for public use. You can't have trails in that. So there's half the land, half that low land is available for trails and use. And about 2/3 of the shoreline is available for public use. It's just that red area that cannot be touched.
I would think it was private.
Well, if it's private, then the HOA handles it and they control it. I mean, you can't have public and HOA or private together. You just can't. It's gotta be either or. Okay, so I guess that'll come back to us.
Yeah, I don't know that we.
That's my idea.
It doesn't change the development much at all. Like we said, we probably pull the cul-de-sac, put some parking in there and, you know, open the doors to, you know, what you'd like that to be, but if it's private, it'll be something similar.
Right, but what's most important, it's a park. Whether it be private or public, there's a park to development. So they have, you know, kids have time to play in their area. That's important too.
Yeah.
Nothing else?
That entrance on Ambassador, I don't think right in, right out is best for that many residents. I think you're gonna need to be able to turn left on Ambassador and go.
The county requirement.
So, Mayor and Council,
They don't
that's
even want
something that,
that,
you know, again, I know the county is providing comments on a concept plan. That is something that, you know, we've discussed with the applicant. We would fully expect that there would be conversations between the county and the city, the applicant, as far as what that looks like, especially looking at, you know, just the needs of this development and how the site is laid out. You know, there needs to be some sort of 2 access points, obviously, in this development. So, it would be something that we would be working for.
And we know they've been talking about a roundabout for years. So that's, now you're not aware of it.
Ambassador,
So we'll
yeah,
have
you
to-
got that right next to the roundabout.
It was almost like, and that, even with our plan 47, we're discussing, you know, around about a 229 and accepting the one in Ambassador, we're accepting that if the county were to do it. So that's in play too. I guess.
So I would look at that entrance as being very wide, right, for people to turn in, a turning lane so people can go left, and a right turning lane so they can go up to Ambassador, out of the development, and then flip the entrance of the commercial park further in as well. That's kind of how I see the best push for approval.
Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Anybody else? Comments? That's it. All right, thank you.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Council, if there are any other comments, we just do want to make clear that, you know, this is your time to help with the design or help figure out what that design looks like. The next step is for the applicant to spend a good chunk of money designing those plans. So what you're saying tonight matters as far as.
I like what I see. Basically, I don't see really any issue. I think the biggest issue is gonna end up having with the county and the state with the road and entrances. That's just my opinion. I agree.
And hopefully you can negotiate, I hope, but otherwise we'll look at other avenues.
I would like the DNR question to be asked, then we can figure out if we want to go public or private on the larger portion. You know, even this concept looks great, and it shows a park trail going in the DNR part that we can't even access, so I feel like I'm looking at something that's not usable.
So you want clarification on what exactly can happen?
If we could get
We do have a copy of that easement. The DNR provided that to us, so we can certainly share that with you.
well, I'd like to be, ask the DNR, what can we do on that? Can we do a Frisbee park per se, where there's very little minimal, what does these parks look like? Are they paved? Are they wood chipped? I don't know. I don't even know how far back what that looks like. You know, it might be full of trees and you couldn't throw a Frisbee 10 feet. I don't know. So
I have one question. On the, can you bring the thumb back up and forth?
Yes, just a second.
For the houses or the riverfront property there, would you consider trading any of that northern section for an apartment and have a high rise where people could actually get a view? I mean, I think of like Champlin, you go down there to the Mississippi River and they went balls to the wall. I mean, it's nice.
Everybody in the
Yeah, Mayor Council, that's gonna be a non-starter. Yeah.
That's a good
That's gonna
answer.
be an absolute non-starter.
We don't want to see that.
The height that's allowed here is 35 feet.
Oh,
So allowing anything more, anywhere near those water, they're gonna have a problem.
okay.
That's a good idea, but then,
Well,
DNRs.
that's what I don't understand. So how do you do it, 150 feet from the Mississippi River? See what I'm saying? I just don't think we're playing with the same rules.
You're not.
You're not.
You're not. With the Rum River scenic rules, we are not only bound by the height of our structures, but the visibility from the river. So we do have a different set of rules than many others.
You can't water.
God, I wish there was like a state representative that wanted to talk to us.
Okay.
Well,
Just saying.
on that apartment though, I would still like to see on that apartment on the northern section. That would be nice for, again, not to take the place of the senior housing, but people that are leaving the neighborhood or downsizing. Within the Ponds North area, there they have a lot of areas where people are now snowbirds and they're gone. They're small, functional, inexpensive or reasonably priced, and they look very nice aesthetically. An apartment in that area would really serve our seniors. I mean, anyone from 55 to 75.
55 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have a product there. We just want to get something reasonable in density, share with you what would make up that density. So that's what feedback.
I like the mix. I mean, residential on the river, you've got some townhome one in the center. You're serving a bunch of the community there in a lot of ways, economically as well. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Okay, all right. Thank you, Beth. Thank you for everyone's patience here tonight. Thank you so much. We knew it was going to be a long one, and that we picked that one right. All right. So, do you need anything to us on that, or just the direction you have, or whatever comments on that?
Mayor Council, we're just looking for feedback tonight, so. Well, we have it.
Moving on to item C, East Shop Site Rezoning, first reading ordinance 288.
Yes. Get to my notes. All right, Mayor Council, before you tonight is a rezoning request for the East Shop site, so south of Bridge Street, east of the road. And staff is requesting that you move to rezone this 2.5 acre site from the R3 high density residential zoning district to the B1 central business district in order to conform with the comprehensive plan's guidance for the site. The comp plan guides the site for commercial use. This area is part of the Bridge Street Commercial Corridor. The current zoning today is R3 high density. The site is outlined in white on the screen. And when the zoning map was updated earlier in 2021, that site was zoned R3, following a proposal for senior housing on that site. That applicant has since walked away. The site remains undeveloped, and staff would like to rezone the site to what it matches the comp plan guidance for. So planning commission reviewed this request at their December meeting and recommended approval of the rezoning, and the suggested motion is on your screen. Questions?
No, I feel it's a good move just simply because we have another assisted living project going on 47. And if there's one here, there's not going to be two here. So changing it back to business is probably the smarter way to go. So I'm for it. Joe, your comments there? Nothing to add. Kevin?
Nothing there.
Nothing. Okay. All right, then after that, I need a motion to adopt East Shop site rezoning first reading ordinance 288. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr.
I
Mayor.
have a first by Councilman Rebar. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilman Rebar makes a second. Any further discussion? If not, this is an ordinance, so it's a roll call. I know you're looking at me. You're make sure of that, okay? Okay, Jenny?
Councilmember Bauer.
Aye.
Mayor Feldman.
Aye.
Councilmember Neubauer.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
All right.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, everybody. I can't thank you enough for this. We all knew it was going to be a long one, like I mentioned before, but we have to give the public time to talk to us, and that's what they've had time to talk to us. They had time for planning and zoning. We need time to talk to council. It's the right thing to do, and we try to be right here as much as possible. So we'll see how it all works out. Hopefully they'll be able to negotiate between them, but we gave them their full time that they deserve. So that's good. And patience is a virtue. All right. Anyway, moving on to item 9D, 2021 code revisions.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is my last one tonight, I promise. So the city code was revised, the adopted city code was revised last April. And since that time, staff has been monitoring the code and how it works as we review requests and questions and applications throughout the year. As part of that, we have identified several housekeeping text amendments that we wanted to bring before you tonight and request to amend the code to clean this up. So they span the gamut of where they're located within the zoning code. The amendments include the site plan review process, principal use tables, some of the uses in there, some changes to the accessory uses, including some text in chapter 8 of the city code, and then some amendments to the definitions as well. So I'll go through each of these, hopefully just touch on them, but if we need to dive further, we certainly can. So for the site plan review, the current procedure that we have in the code today doesn't distinguish between principal and accessory buildings. So we require any new non-residential structure and multifamily structure to go through the site plan review process with the planning commission as well as with the council. This seems to be overly onerous for accessory buildings since it's not specified if it just means principal or accessory. So staff would like to amend the code to clarify when the full site plan review process is necessary and when it's not. So we have added some text here specifying principal buildings as opposed to principal or accessory. And then we've also added a piece on the bottom here for new construction and modifications of accessory buildings. And then anything within that section F doesn't need to go through the planning commission and council. That's an administrative site plan review process. Technical questions on that before I move on? The next piece here is the principal use table, specifically the uses of animal boarding, shelter, daycare center, and the rural event center. So for animal boarding, that is something that's currently allowed as a permitted use in the A2 district. Staff is proposing that that be switched to permitted with standards, and then that be held to the standards that are already in code today. The rural event center, this is a use that is permitted with standards today in the A2 district. However, the standards reference the need to obtain an interim use permit. So we would like to match the consistency there and make that an interim use in the A2 district. Questions on that? All right, so then we'll get into the accessory use amendments. They cover a variety of uses, so I'll talk about each of these in a little more detail here. First is the idea of an accessory agricultural building. Agricultural buildings are something that are required by state statute. However, the requirements that pertain to agricultural buildings are currently kind of mixed in our accessory structure provisions. So it makes it hard when staff or when the public are trying to understand what they need to do. It makes it hard for us to decipher exactly what's needed. So we'd be proposing to separate accessory A buildings out as their own specific use, so that they have their own specific standards and that we can deal with them appropriately. So those are proposed in the A1, A2, urban reserve, and rural residential districts. All right, I'm not going to read through all of this text. These areas where there are pink, I just wanted to note that these are some areas where we have noted that some clarifications need to be made. They're just technical, just like changing references and things like that. But those would be made for the second reading. You chose to approve the first reading. And the definition of agricultural accessory building, this meets the Minnesota statute definition. So accessory structures, and some changes are proposed there as well. The first would be to clarify that no accessory structures are allowed on non-residential property within the urban service area. Staff has gotten a few requests through the year of non-residential properties wanting to build 2, 3, 4 structures. And that's something that seems to be something that would not be appropriate in the city. So we'd like to clarify that. The second is that all residential homes are required to have a garage of at least 440 square feet. That's an average 2-car garage size. This is something that's currently required in the urban service area, but not in the rural. We have had questions in the past about this as well, about people who don't want to build a garage onto their home. So we'd like to clarify that. And then finally, we would be modifying this portion of the code to remove the provisions that deal with agricultural buildings, since they now would live somewhere else. Again, not gonna go through all of these, but if you have questions, we can certainly talk about them.
The only thing I would add is why do we care whether or not they build a garage or choose a garage or their house, regardless of where they live?
So that's something that pretty
I
much
get the
is standard.
standard for the most part, but I just don't understand, I mean, if they buy a lot of land, they just don't want a garage.
It can get you into trouble down the road if somebody else buys it and they want a garage and
Not
you're
an
already dealing
accessory
with impervious
structure.
surface or something like that. Yeah, you've already got a bunch of accessory structures on the site, and now maybe they come in for a variance asking for a garage, and now we're in a position where what do you do?
Scary.
Yep. The next one is dealing with keeping of animals, bees and chickens. So all of those regulations are currently split right now between chapter 8 and chapter 10. Chapter 10 is the zoning in the city code. And it makes it, again, hard for staff and the public to find where the requirements are that people need to adhere to. So what we would be proposing is to allow the keeping of animals or fowl in the rural residential and the R1 where they are today, and expanding that to the R2 district as well. And the reason for that is these areas here circled in black on the screen. These are all areas that are large lots, but they are within the urban service area of the city. These are lots that would be able to keep animals, would be able to keep bees because they have enough land. But because of the changes that we made to the comp plan and the zoning code in the recent years, we want to make sure that that opportunity isn't lost to them. The other piece here would be to isolate the keeping of chickens so that it's not tied in with the animals of fowl. So have that be its own separate use, which is permitted in the rural residential and the R1. The reason it's proposed to be permitted in those areas is because in chapter 8, where the standard for chickens are today, it's allowed in the rural residential and the R1. So we want to keep it consistent with what the standards are today. Any questions on those? So then short-term vacation rentals is the next use. Staff is proposing to add a requirement here about needing to obtain a rental license through the city for any of these types of uses. And the reason for that is just to provide the city some basic information. It also gives the city the ability to revoke that license and stop that use if there ever becomes a nuisance or a problem on the site.
That's like an Airbnb type situation.
Correct, yep,
And the only time you ever be able to regulate that is if the neighbor calls in and says, "Hey,
correct. So, yeah, we would hear about it through the nuisance.
it's just there, but.
And then we have the accessory uses within business and industrial districts. We are proposing several modifications here too. The first is that we will be removing accessory structures as permitted in standard use in B1, B2, business park, and I1. And that goes along with not allowing accessory structures on any non-residential property within the urban service area. You'd still be allowed to have accessory structures in the I2, which is out on the west side of the city in the rural service area. Second modification that's proposed is to remove the use that is compost structures and firewood piles. So that currently is an accessory use that's allowed in the business and industrial districts. And then thirdly, we would request that we add an accessory use that says uses incidental to the principal use. So that would be something like you have a store, and part of that store is used for storage of the materials or what have you. So allowing a little bit of that flexibility so that a portion of that site can be used for something related to the principal use, but maybe not to the actual principal use. So that's the table that goes with it. And then lastly, definitions. The first definition that staff is proposing to add is about significant trees. So this is something that when a development comes in and they're required to do a landscaping plan, they're required to do a tree survey to show us which significant trees are proposed to be removed or saved. But right now, our code doesn't say what a significant tree is. So I can make it a little bit gray as far as what kind of trees they're exactly supposed to be surveying. So we'd like to add the definition in there. This is a pretty standard definition for significant tree. And then for the definition for attached townhouse row house dwelling, currently this definition allows a maximum of 8 units for this type of use, but it doesn't have a minimum. So what that means is that for 2 units, the definition of townhouse overlaps with the definition of twin home as well as 2-unit or duplex. So that can cause a little bit of confusion. So we'd like to clarify that and say that townhouses need to have between 3 and 8 units. So planning commission reviewed this in December and recommended approval of the amendments. For you tonight would be 5 actions. That are listed on the screen, I believe. It can help us.
All right, well, listen, I've browsed through it, but this is where I bow to your expertise. And anytime, like I was telling Kate earlier, that you could take gray areas out of anything and make it more clarified, understood by the public, so there's no reason one way or the other. I think it's always a good plus. And terminology, the terms that you put in there are the key to it. So like I said, I've dealt with great codes were great for 25 years and a pain in the ass. So this is the best way to do it, verification and take out the grading. So I'm all for it myself, Joe.
Housekeeping is great. Pretty much the same thing. There's significant tree and all that stuff seems somewhat trivial, but I don't see any harm in it necessarily.
Well, it's the whole thing about it's better having that here than we did not have.
Well, I've seen the lower
So Kevin, your comments?
No, housekeeping and reorganization is good as long as we're not changing anything. Just making it a little easier again to navigate, and then I like it.
Is this considered the first reading? Code revisions first reading, because that's not how I interpret it on the agenda. I just want that as a clarification.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this will be the first reading for these ordinance amendments.
Okay, good job. Like I said, anytime you can make it crystal clear, so less questions and answers are properly done, is always a good thing. All right, so I need a motion to adopt 2021 code revisions on a first reading. Is that right? Am I doing that right?
Each individual.
Oh, I have to go through each and
Ordinance 289.
Each individual ordinance.
oh gosh.
Sorry about that.
Read it up on the screen.
Dave, go ahead.
First one would be motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 289, approving amendments to the Division 3 Administration and Procedures in the zoning code as presented by staff.
I'll make that motion.
Councilman Newell makes that motion. I have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all right, Councilman Robinson makes a second. These are ordinances, we have to go a roll call on each one, right?
Correct.
Okay, Jane?
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Mueller,
Aye.
Mayor Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye. Okay. All right, moving on to the second one there. I guess I can read it because you got it right there. So, do I have to do motion? Well, you know, do I, okay, my
Want me
motion,
to read them?
you know what, just
Make a
do it,
motion.
Dave.
Make
Just
a
do
motion
it.
for everyone.
Motion to approve point number 2 as presented.
Okay, do I have a motion? I'll make that motion. Councilor Barr makes that motion. Second. Second. And Councilor Weaver makes second. Jenny?
Mayor Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer,
Aye.
Councilmember Mueller,
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to number 3.
I make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 291, approving amendments pertaining to accessory use, division 4, 6, and 7, as presented by staff.
All right. I'll make that motion. All right, Councilman Bauer makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Robinson makes a second. Jane?
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Mueller,
Aye.
Mayor Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
Aye. All right, go again, Joe.
I make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 292, approving amendments in section 8-3, animals of the city code, as presented by staff.
I'll second. Well, there was that a motion?
That was-
That was a motion. And a second. All right, Jane?
Councilmember Mueller,
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer,
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Mayor Feldman.
Aye. Okay,
I would also like to make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 293, approving amendments to division 2 definitions of the zoning code as presented by staff.
I'll make that second. Okay,
Okay. Councilmember Robinson,
I'm thinking, no, aye.
Councilmember Mueller,
Aye.
Mayor Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bauer.
all right. All right, you can tell we're all tired. You can tell them. All right, listen, good job, everybody. Thank you. We can know the public, I take it there is nobody else, okay? Yes, I'm tired right now. No reports, council member reports. Kevin, I'll start with you real quickly.
Nothing really reported this time, sir.
Okay, Joe.
I thought I had something, but at this point, I don't.
Rob,
Welcome to January or 2022. Nothing to report.
all right, and I'm just gonna cut it short with a couple things more. This liquor meeting today, they thickened the fire retardant spray on the foam, bring the new addition. We'll get that tested and get that approved so that the temp seal until the 10th will be permanent. Tomorrow, we'll finish up the cabinetry where the wine tasting area is. And I'm meeting with Parrish and Miles, our architect, on Wednesday to sort out the final invoices. Hopefully put an end to this thing. Very glad that it turned out as well as it did. We made all 3 holidays, by the way, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. Staff did a great job. Again, I want to thank everybody here for your patience tonight. We had to give the public their due here to talk to us, and we have done that. And we'll see where it goes from there on the 18th. Once again, I want to wish everybody a happy New Year, safe New Year, prosperous New Year, all that goes with that. Thank you for all the hard work you do for us and with us, okay? I know it's not easy at times, but thank you. No other further business, I take it? I hope. I hope. All right, well, I'm going to turn this meeting on Monday, January 3rd at 9:36.